This is the Shawn Yankey Show.
And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
Today, we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack.
This episode of the Shawn Yankey Show is being brought to you by the support of viewers like me. We realize the importance of independent media and truth in this time of mass deceit and propaganda. We have decided to fight for and support it to keep it alive. You can help us in this fight for truth. Contribute at patreon.com/Shawn Yankey. Thanks for coming to the show. It'll begin soon.
Hey everybody, get in here. It is time once again for the Shawn Yankey Show. I am Shawn, and this is the Shawn Yankey Show. You are right on time. I was the one that was late. That little intro is only 2 minutes long, and I was sharing. I was trying to share because sharing is caring. This is just a little independent show, and we completely depend on y'all to share this and get this out. Now, if you'll forgive me, I got to do something really quick, but I'll be right back. Sorry about that, but yes, let's get started. It is Friday night on the Shawn Yankey Show. And on Friday nights around here, we get a guest for you. I bring in a guest and we have a conversation and hang out. And it's always great. And tonight's guest is a returning friend of the show. Philip Polk Palmer is coming back on to hang out with us and share some stories and talk to us. So I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be very exciting. That will be in just a few minutes. Philip will be joining us soon, and we'll be getting going. But let's say hi to everybody and get this started, because this is an interactive chat show. This is a discussion show based around the comment section. So no matter where you're here watching the show, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch, please take part and participate. Comment, of course, even if you're here later, even if you come after the live. You know, most of our views come after the live. So even if you're here later on, please still participate in the show and comment, say hi, let us know you're here. In fact, we only have one rule at the Shawn Yankey Show, and that is if it's your first time here, you have to comment. You have to take part. But let me say hi to everyone who is here and get us going. Lolly got first. Hey, Lolly. Helen's here. Helen the Felon holding it down on YouTube. Lee, Danon, Joan. Hey, Joan. Good to see you. Hugh's here. Karen, CJ. Hey, Will, Tammy. Nissa's here. Yes, the foot. Big feets. We're going to talk about Bigfoot tonight. Philip is a Bigfoot hunter, searcher, researcher, goes out and explores and looks for these creatures, has had an interaction with one, and is going to tell us some fantastic stories about paranormal experiences, whether with big feats or other things. It's going to be fully paranormal tonight. We're going to stay in Philip's wheelhouse, and we're going to have a fantastic time hanging out. But hey, Michael and Joy, I see we still don't have our problem fixed. Look at that. See how his profile picture is not up there? That's because something weird is going on, and I don't know what it is. We haven't figured it out yet. Technology Shenanigans by Mark Zuckerbuck, who I noticed has not been showing his face around here lately. You know, Zuckerbuck has not been around. And I don't know why, I don't know why he's hiding. But yes, this is going to be cool. You are right. Tammy can see the pic. So it's just me? They're just keeping me from seeing the pic? Why? To me, that was just a little blank face. That's really weird. Hugh has met a big feats, but he didn't date her. He was smart. He recognized the threat and moved on. Your presence makes me smile, Aaron. Thanks for coming. I'm glad to see you here. But yes, in just a few minutes, Philip Polk Palmer is going to join us, and we're going to have a conversation and hang out. But this is the Shawn Yankey Show, and we gather every weeknight at the same time here on, like I said, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. That's where we're going to right now. In the meantime, eventually, our eventual goal is to be streaming right over here to the website, theshawnyankeyshow.com. That is the official website of the show. And eventually everything we have will hub out of there. All original content, videos, interviews, guests, everything will be off from theshawnyankeyshow.com. So check it out. Go over there and look around. It's new. And so far I've been doing it on my own, but I'm trying, and it's coming together pretty nicely. And it's going to be a great home for us. So check that out. Dion dated a Sasquatch in high school. I've never dated a Sasquatch. I've dated some goblins, though, and some trolls, but never a Sasquatch. Never a big Phoebes. Twitch in the house. See, that's what's cool about this streaming software is I can bring in your comments. I can involve you on any platform. And we will be involving the comment section during our discussion tonight, as I always do. But, it won't be as interactive as we usually are each night. But I will be putting them up there. And every once in a while, we will comment on something you say. So please take part and continue to have a conversation during our conversation with Philip. But Philip is here in the Shawn Yankey Show green room. So if you guys are ready, we can go ahead and begin. I want to bring Philip into the show. Philip is a returning guest of the show, one of the earliest guests I ever had on, in fact. And back when this was just Conspiracy Theories and Chill, Philip was on when we first met him. But he is a fantastic guest, very interesting, great storyteller, and I'm excited. If you guys are ready, I'm going to bring him in. So without any further ado, Philip Polk Palmer. Hey, Philip.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you, brother?
I'm doing great. It's always good to be back here with you.
I'm excited. I have a great time every time you're on too. So I'm looking forward to it. Last time you were on with us, we did kind of a panel thing. It was the first time I tried that. It went really well, but I'm glad to spend time with just me and you.
Yeah. I enjoyed it too. I just, as you know, just like you, I get so involved with politics that I wear myself out. And I was looking forward to that show. You can't really not go into aliens and not get into some degree of like conspiracy. That's a little hand in hand, but I was hoping to keep it driven more just towards the focus. But, things do what they do. The conversation goes.
Yes.
Goes,
Yes, especially those group discussions. Sometimes they do get off track easily.
Sure. or it's not off track. I don't know. That guy was really cool. I don't remember his name, but he was way more intellectual than I am. I'm much more of a just visceral feel kind of guy.
He would laugh at you for saying that. He is, but he's very modest, and he always shies away from anyone calling him smart. But he is smart. That's what's funny about it.
Yeah. See, when it comes to any kind of, even in the subjects I like, I'm a lazy dude. So like, if I can get away with less in terms of my learning, I'll do it. I'm not one of these guys that can pour over lots of information to the point where it starts to bore me. I've got friends who are in tech and they actually get off on reading manuals about tech stuff. That's great. That's them. But in any subject for me, like I remember listening to an interview with Eddie Van Halen years and years and years ago. And he said himself, if I can find an easier way to do something, that's what I'm going to do, And, obviously he was a wizard. Hey, Tammy, how you doing? Thank you for being here, all of you. I appreciate anybody who's here. I don't see the private chat thing on my right. I see where it is, but I don't see, maybe I don't have it on comments or something. There we go. Okay. Danan, Tammy, Marie, Aaron, Joan. I know Joan, Melissa, Ron, Hugh.
I think it's cool that it lets you see the comment section too. That's neat, isn't it?
Yeah. Of course, I'm so one-track minded. If I try to focus, I'll have to probably readdress these things. I am the hot sauce guy. Hugh. That's right. Oh, I should have brought a little bottle to put up in front of.
How's that going? It's launched now, right? I've seen that you're sharing stuff.
I've been selling, but I did have an issue. I don't want to get deep into that right now. The company that I had working with my recipe for me, I'm not going to name them because I don't want to disparage them. But what I signed off on initially and what they produced for me, and I don't mean the hotter sauce, the milder sauce only, subpar. It's not what I signed off on. It's going to, I don't know if I'm going to get a legal battle or not, but what it's come back to is me doing my original plan, making it myself, doing really small batches. When it sells out, I'll let people know, hey, there's a little waiting list. But you know how it is. This is your show. You care about your show. Everybody cares about the thing they do more than anybody else. And this company, I'm not disparaging. I know they're out to make $1, but they didn't own up on their half. I'll probably eat $2,000. And I have to do that, but I don't feel good about selling this product. The hot sauce is good. The mild one, chuck it, redo it. So there we are.
Dude, I support that 100% integrity, and I get it.
Yeah.
You want to be able to stand behind your product, especially if you're passionate about it. So
that's right. 100% it's the same now, and everybody's this way about whatever their passions are. And I'm into music too. And it's always great to have somebody like what it is you do. But that you have to like it first. You have to be the one going, unless you've got that mentality where it's like, oh, as long as other people like it, I don't care. I just want to make money. That's that sellout mentality. And I'm not about that. So, yeah. But yeah, I'm excited. Things are on track. I've gotten a lot of great feedback. Even for the one I don't approve of, I've gotten great feedback on. But I am putting the nix on any further sales on the mild one until I get my 5. I'm going to make a 5-gallon batch. That'll probably give me 50 bottles, So there we are. Thanks for asking, Hugh. That was Hugh Stone. Yeah.
Yeah, look, we have the best peeps on the internet. They remember you.
Yeah, they are all really cool. These people are, it's an awesome bunch. Even when I've been viewing, the shows I've viewed that I'm not on, everybody's just, it's like a little group of like-minded people that are allowing people to be who they are,
We have a family atmosphere of open and inviting people. It is really special what we've built here at the Shawn Yankey Show. It is cool.
Yeah, you've done.
It was an accident. It happened on its own.
Yeah, no, you and these guys have done great work with this show. Yeah, we first met on the Robert's show.
Right to Reason.
And I respect Robert. It became kind of a shit show, but that's sort of the name of the game with some of those things. I was trying to keep my blood pressure down. Not so much of Robert, but whoever the other two guys were, really, because it was more of the name throwing. You know what I mean? I just wish the one thing people would do, I don't ask anybody to believe anything. As a matter of fact, belief and disbelief are the two sides of the same coin. One is the fervent, belief that something is, and then you have a religious belief that something isn't. And neither one of those are based on experience. I choose to believe this, but I haven't actually. So I choose to believe something doesn't exist, but I haven't actually gotten out into the environment wherever this thing is and explored whether it's, there's nothing wrong with reading books about subjects too, but a mixture of all that, studying up on it. It's like the old skeptic. Here we go. The Garden of Good and Hot. That's the bird girl from the famous Savannah murder story, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. Yes, I did do that.
I like it though. I think it's clever marketing.
Yeah, well, that was what that was about. But so back in the old school days of the UFO thing, where the skeptic Philip Class, he'd always come out with like this just pat answer. Oh, that's swamp gas. Look, I'm not saying somebody might not have seen glowing swamp gas one time and got freaked out, but when you're seeing what appears to be a metallic disc in the air with oscillating lights, that's not swamp gas. I don't know what it is. Nobody can say for sure, but it's not swamp gas. That's what gets me the most. Like even that magazine, Skeptic Magazine, all those guys, they just dismiss anything they don't know about without researching. I'm not saying believe. I'm just saying go look at it first and then maybe form an opinion. Maybe it's still best to keep it open-ended. I only generally like to talk about what I feel like I know, and I don't know much. That's the whole thing. All you can talk about is your experience, and the rest is conjecture. And I do want to share a tale with y'all tonight. And once again, I'm not asking, when we get into this tale, I'm not asking anybody to believe. Whether it's real or not, whether the guy is hoaxing or whether he's in a delusional state or whether he really experienced what he says he experienced, it is quite a yarn. And it is frightening, And I'm not one of these guys that comes from the whole Bigfoot or all boogeyman kind of thing. This story in itself is a really frightening tale. I told you earlier, I was like, I got something you're going to want to hear,
I'm looking forward to it.
I can't vouch for it. I can say what my opinion about this guy is just from viewing him previously before this interview, viewing him on because he and another partner had a podcast, and they go out in the field and in Florida. And it's called the Trail of Bigfoot. And my opinion of this guy, he's a humble guy. That's my opinion. It's just an opinion based on watching videos. Who knows? I don't know him. He could have all kind of secrets. I don't know. He probably does. We all do, right?
Right.
But he doesn't come across like when I think about this story. I'm just trying to come also from the angle of, I guess some people might want attention sometimes, and that's all they need. Doesn't come across to me. He didn't on his show. It's coming across. Matter of fact, he was definitely second fiddle to the other guy. He was clearly not the leader in this duo that go out and research. He doesn't come across to me as somebody that's attention seeking. So I keep asking, what is he going to benefit from what happened? He's not writing a book, as far as I know. He no longer goes into the forest. He won't do it.
Really?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm obviously going to be serving this up out of memory. I wish I could remember every detail that he spoke, but I can remember enough about it to give you the gist of the story and how truly frightening it would be if it really did occur to him, or even if he just really believed it occurred to him. I guess that's what I would like to know is, there's a woman. I don't remember what her handle is, but she usually looks at video of people like Fauci or politicians, and she reads their body language.
I think I know who you're talking about. Yeah, she has a YouTube channel.
Yes, and I sent her an email. I said, look, I've got a video I'd love for you to watch. The main thing I want you to do is when this guy breaks down every so often in the interview, is he really going into PTSD, or what do you think? Because I don't know about body language.
What'd she think?
She never responded. She hadn't responded to me. So I'm thinking I'm thinking I'm just going to shotgun the video to her and say, "Here, it's here anyway. Do what you will with it if you want, and let me know." So
You'd think that'd be a good one for her to break down.
you would, because clearly this guy in this interview, and this is a 2-hour interview, he is continually breaking down. Now, if any of you guys know more about this, please tell me. The one thing that I didn't even notice this, but once I viewed a fraction of the video on Reddit, God, these people on Reddit are harsh.
Oh, they are.
They all came out yelling hoaxer, but they did say he keeps having these breakdowns, but I don't see any tears on his face. Now, is it possible to go into that kind of I'm going to break down and not cry? I don't know. I know when I've had really emotional experiences, like putting down a pet you don't want to do, I go to pieces, and it's a gusher. But that's me. I don't know. So should we start with that or move somewhere else?
I think we start there. I'm ready to hear it.
Okay. I don't think there's any problem with me naming this guy because his name is out there with this thing.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to forget his first name, but his last name is Barnes. When his first name comes to me, I will bring that back up. But so he is part of a duo. Actually, it's even more than a duo because the guy that I told you that's kind of the leader of this group brings his wife and sister along sometimes. But usually the hardcore group is him and this other guy. I believe they're down in like the Green Swamp area of Florida, which is a pretty vast. Florida, man, it has been cut up. I'm telling you, it's one state below me. It's a lot longer than Georgia, and it kind of looks like it's more square miles than Georgia, but it's not. There are twice as many people in Florida as there are in Georgia. There's like 10 plus million people in Georgia. There's like 20 million people in Florida or more. And I want to bring up a point about that later, why that plays into the whole Sasquatch subject. But there still are a few areas where there's some vast forests, but for the most part, other than the Everglades and then a few of these wildlife protected areas, it's just neighborhoods everywhere, Neighborhoods or farms or whatever, but it's all cut up. So anyway, these guys have been doing this about 6 years. I didn't watch their show regularly, but I would pull it up, and they've definitely come across some very interesting, for lack of a better word, evidence in terms of vocalizations, in terms of the stick and tree structure anomalies. So sometime much earlier this year, I was just perusing podcasts, seeing what might appeal to me in the realm of that subject. And I came up on one called Bigfoot Odyssey. And I just said, let's see what this is about. I had no clue. Well, immediately when they brought the guy on, I said, I know that guy. He's with those two people that go to the research down in Florida. So the guy did a pretty lengthy intro before bringing him on. But when he brought him on, they took a while for him to get to his story. And even talking about the story, he was having trouble, and they kept reassuring him, it's okay. Take your time. We're here for you. Everybody's in support of you. Just take your time. Don't worry about breaking down. So here's what happened. He wouldn't reveal where it was, but I'm pretty certain this was a place either in a forest in Georgia or Florida. He wanted to get away, is the way I interpret it. He had a friend drop him off in a cabin in the middle of nowhere, just in the middle of the deep forest, which he had rented. And so, he gets settled in, and every night, it's the same routine. He goes outside. He's got a fire pit. He builds up a massive fire. I don't know if he's cooking his dinner outside or not, but he's hanging out by the fire. And the wood line is not too, it's a small yard, and then you just go into the wood line. The forest's not far out. And right behind the fire is the wood line. And he kept hearing the first couple of nights these sounds that he said sounded like hogs in the woods, right away from the open area. The next morning, he'd go in there, and I don't know what you know about hogs, but I can tell you from my research areas here, they tear it up. They tear the ground up. They root and root and root, and they tear it up. And it's very clear when you have hogs because the ground is just disturbed everywhere. So he'd go back in there, and he wouldn't see any disturbance. There was nothing. He's like, wait a minute, if that were hogs, why is there nothing torn up? And it's happened for a couple of nights. So he was getting towards think he was going to leave out on a Friday, so it might have been like a Tuesday or a Wednesday. He had tons of firewood, and he wanted, in his words, he just for some reason wanted to make sure and burn up all the firewood before he left. So he made a massive bonfire, got this thing just roaring. And he's just sitting there in the chair, you know, kind of a recliner outdoor chair, looking at the fire. And then he sees through the fire on the other side in the wood line 2 red eyes. He's like, yeah, what's that? So he stood up and looked around each side of the fire. And when he would look around, he wouldn't see the eyes anymore. So then he would sit back down and he would see the eyes again. Eventually stood up. He took a flashlight, shined it into the woods. Couldn't see anything. And he just thought, oh, who knows? Maybe it's some optical illusion with the fire. He sits back down. He sees the eyes again. And the next thing he says is these 2 hands from behind him grabbed him by the shoulders and pushed him down into his seat and held him down. And he could perceive that whatever this thing was that was pushing him down was not the only thing there. There were others off to his right that were there observing what was going on. And what this thing started doing was communicating. People in the Bigfoot world, for some reason, have taken to referring to telepathy as mind speak. I'm like, right. It's telepathy, right? But they like using that word. Another term that they use that cracks me up is ground sticks. That's when you find a stick firmly stuck in the ground. Well, it's like, well, of course it's a ground stick. It's just a stick stuck in the ground. It's just one of the most silly, obvious things I've ever heard, you know? So mind speak, I guess, is the same as somebody speaking to you telepathically. So this thing is speaking to him in English telepathically. And it is telling him what it is and what he is. And it tells him on no uncertain terms that it is a predator and that he is the prey. And he starts telling them that, like, in humanity, because he or it, I don't know if it was a he, I shouldn't say that. But this being was saying that they live on the other side of the veil, but they're capable of moving through the veil into this area where we are. And he stated that in life, there are people that they view as prey. There are people that they view as pawns, which they use to catch prey, to basically to lure prey in. And then there are people they just don't care about. They don't give a damn about. They're indifferent to it. And they will communicate with each other and decide at some point, is this particular being worthy of being prey? And he actually communicated to him the day that they determined he was prey. And it was, he was in the swamp with his friend filming. It was a particular one of their videos that they'd done. And I didn't see this one. They described what was going on. They were getting some tree knocks kind of from one area and from another area. And all of a sudden, these tree knocks are moving closer and closer. They're feeling surrounded, and they're kind of like, we might be in some bad company right now. We don't know what's going on. But he said that was the day they decided he and his partner were prey. And an interesting thing that this thing communicated about the tree knocks was he said, y'all think these are tree knocks. Y'all think these are the Bigfoot knocking on trees with sticks. He said, that's not what you're hearing. That's our conversation. But the conversation is much longer, and you're only getting a moment of it, a snippet of it, and it sounds like a knock. I mean, this is some really crazy stuff, like really weird. And I thought, wow, if he is making this up, he went to some detail to make some of these details up.
So what he says, let me see if I'm following so far, is that while he was out, like doing a research, a group of these, he encountered a group, and they held him down and transmitted this information to him and explained this. Why would they do that?
Well, we're going to get to why they would do that. Okay. That's where it gets really dark and really frightening.
So I am understanding so far They
You are right
basically
there with it.
explained and laid it down for him.
This being is informing him that he is doomed, and this is the moment. You know, and so there's another Bigfoot researcher that died just a couple of years ago. Of course, you know, whenever I have to draw up a name, my brain just goes. Shh.
Me
He's
too.
pretty well known in Bigfoot circles. He was really controversial because he's kind of a shit starter, and he started shit with these guys continually.
Yeah.
And so there was no love lost, but this being told him they killed him. It said that they know your weaknesses, they know your physical maladies if you have any, they know where those areas are, they know your emotional weaknesses, they study you, they know everything about you. And he said their sense of time is not like ours, that they may take 20 years drawing you out and messing with you before they decide to basically lower the boom. They have a totally different sense of time than we do. So it's no big deal for them to tease you along for 20 years. Their main thing, though, is to keep you going out, there. And see, what he said is, you know, he goes, as any researcher knows, you're going to have all these dry periods where you're not getting any evidence. And you're thinking about throwing in the towel. And that's about where they were when they suddenly found this massive footprint. This thing communicated to them. Who do you think put that footprint there? Who do you think put that footprint there for you? That was to make sure you stay out there. So it kept telling him all these details. So he told him that they were the ones that offed that guy. His name will come to me later, or not.
Right. As soon as you don't need it anymore, that's how it works with me.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm right back.
So they told him that, and they told him his partner was also on the list. They were going to get him sooner or later. And so what he was describing, so these things, let me tell you what he said, the best he could describe is how they looked. They were black, smoky, wispy beings that looked like they had a hood or a cloak on. And they said that they were the masters. And Bigfoot are basically just there in their hand, in the palm of their hand. Whatever you think Bigfoot is, that's them manipulating the situation. These things live on the other side of the veil, as they describe. And the interesting thing, so they're the masters, and then they're what they call the unlearned. And those are the ones that still haven't had a kill. And they don't know much yet. And something he really said that was intriguing to me, he said, when the masters move through the veil, they can come through seamlessly and you won't know it. But he does recall saying he would see these things in the woods, like quickly moving between one tree and another. And it's like that kind of thing, you know, that fleeting thing out the corner of your eye. The master said they can move into this dimension or this realm seamlessly, but the unlearned, when they come through, they actually put a perforation in the fabric of the realm, and it leaves, this is the weirdest thing in the world, it leaves a scent. And that scent is that skunky odor people talk about. And the funniest thing is, oftentimes when I'm walking in the woods here by my house or going down the street, I've always assumed, and it probably is, I've assumed it's fox urine or deer scent, but I will just suddenly walk into a cloud of this really skunky smell. And it did take me aback for a minute, you know. Pretty much it told him they've done things to make, they even use the guy's wife and sister to make sure they stay in there. They've done things like pull on one of the women's ponytails, and they turn around, there's nothing there. They knocked the girl's mic boom stand, knocked that, and turn around, nothing there. But it's all to get your attention and make you think, wow, something is going on. We got to keep coming out here and trying to figure it out. That's their job. So pretty much after terrorizing this guy, they may be shapeshifters, Holly. I don't know. They may, maybe it's them and Bigfoot are kind of one and the same, but they kind of made it sound like, I don't want to say Bigfoot's doing their bidding, but somehow they're manipulating the scenario where Bigfoot or Sasquatch or whatever we call it is involved.
So these beings are separate entities from
he had a really negative outlook, obviously based on what he's saying his experience was. He said all these people that look at him as these beings of love and light trying to take us to a higher realm, he said they're just teasing them out. They're lying to them. They're keeping them strung along. And that's a hard thing to hear because I don't want to think about this that way. I try to think of them as these forest people based on my limited understanding. And that if they are a type of people, because they're certainly more than an upright gorilla, if they are a type of people, they're going to run the gamut like us, right? There's some bad actors, there's some good people, there's some indifferent people. That's the way I generally see it. Some of them may be responsible for human abduction. I don't know. But this brings it up to a whole different level. And so, back to your question, he asked him, why, if you're going to kill me, are you telling me? Oh, he said this was communicated telepathically to them. Why are you then giving me all this knowledge? And they said, because the more knowledge they give the victim, the greater the kill. This being told them after they make a kill, because they don't eat their victims, they just kill them. They go back to their realm and they celebrate just like hunters would if they shot a 12-point buck, right? Pop open a bunch of beers around a campfire, And he even, his name's Mark, that's it. Mark even said, look at me. I go out in the woods all pompous like, and I kill deer, and I come back and I brag to people about my kill. I'm no better than they are, Yeah, and I'm not. And once again, I'm not bad mouth anybody that hunts, and got plenty of deer. It's a great food source, right? So keep that in mind. I try to err away from judgment on people's individual behaviors, and yes. But he was kind of down on himself because he thought about all the times he took out these animals just for sport. And that's what these things are doing. They're doing it just for sport. And they relish the kill. And once they get ready, they plan it. And they all, it's the one that gets picked to do the kill, the master, and all the unlearned are there watching and right behind it. And that's the other thing he said, when you hear us speak or me speak, we are speaking with one voice. We speak in unison. They're completely unified. So he basically told him it's a much better kill when I can fill you with all this knowledge that you can't do anything about it. You're doomed, and you know it. And now we've horrified you, and now we get to take that last moment. Here's what happened. I know there's plenty of info that they imparted to him that I'm not remembering right now, but you are getting the gist of this story. But bear in mind, he lives in the city. He doesn't feel safe in the city. He says he's seen these wispy shadows in his apartment building now, because he dodged a bullet. So what happened was, like sometimes gases will build up in a fire log, like the sap will basically expand, and then you'll hear a big pop because it's bursting out of the wood. He said this was like that, except it was so much louder. It was like a shotgun blast. It was like the fire blew up, and all at once, these beings backed off, and a voice in his head said, "Run." And this is a guy in his upper 60s, okay? And he's got a bad knee, but he said, I ran like I've never run before, and I ran into that cabin, and I locked the door, and then I could hear them on the porch. And they couldn't just come in. That was the interesting thing. If you know the old vampire stories where the vampires have to be invited in.
That was the first thing I thought of.
They were asking him, they were like, let us in, let us in. He locked the door and he wouldn't do it. And here's the worst part, though. He was so utterly just, imagine if this really happened, how shaken to your core with terror you would be. He just grabbed a bottle of whiskey, and he's not even a big drinker. And he just started pounding the booze because he was terrified. He wasn't going to leave the cabin. He's stuck in the woods. And it was like, the people that come take care of the people that clean the cabin up were going to be there for a couple of days. He had poor reception on his phone, and he just drank himself into a stupor. But eventually he was able to get a hold of his friend, and his friend came and got him. And the first thing he did, he couldn't think anymore. He said when he got out of the cabin, he had the inability to focus or think on anything. Like his best friend that he does this YouTube video series with, he couldn't even remember where he lived. And they only live a few miles apart. And he finally remembered where he lived, and he got there. And he went there to tell him what happened and that he was dropping out of the show. And he urged him to do the same because they said they've got his ticket too. Now, it sounds to me like if they've got your number, if they want you, I don't think you have to be out in the woods, even though they did seem very interested in keeping you out there. They told him the woods, the forest of the world, the wild areas of the world are theirs, that it was gifted to them. And they didn't say by who, but they said that's their domain and they can do whatever they want in their domain. And that's when I started thinking about the missing 411 stuff, Shawn. These people, I don't know how much any of you guys know about the whole missing 411 subject, but that stuff is utterly frightening no matter what the cause is. So who knows?
This is the missing 411.
Okay, so there's a former police officer named David Politis. Years ago, I think he tried to help in some state or federal park missing person situation. I think he was already retired as a police officer. But when he was leaving the park, a couple of rangers, and forgive me, David, if I'm missing the story at all, pulled him aside and said, look, you need to look a lot more into this. And they didn't just mean this story. He said, there's a lot more going on in these parks than you understand. And that was it. That sent him off on his quest. He's written a series of books called Missing 411. They're divided by separate sections of different sections of the country, and even outside of this country. I bought the one on the East Coast stuff. I'll give you a prime example. So there was a kid if I have my date right, in 1967, who went with the family. And I think when I say the family, it was mostly the men, like the father and the grandfather and some uncles. And they went into the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee. This kid was about 5 years old, maybe 6. And when you get to the top of this mountain, there's an open field. I think it was called Spence Field. And they were just there, having a picnic and playing. And eventually another family came up there and they had kids. And once again, I'm drawing on names. I can never get a name. This kid's name will come up at some point. But their last name was the same as the other family's last name, which might mean nothing, but it was just an interesting little coincidence. So the kids started playing together. And this child and the father watched as this happened. They were playing hide and seek. And the kid ran behind a bush that was right at the edge of the wood line. The father intently watched the bush, waiting for his son to come out. And his son didn't come out. And he ran over to the bush, and he wasn't there. And this is all documented stuff. Now, this isn't like the previous story where it's the guy telling you. This is the Green Berets got involved in this. Okay, this is real stuff. Tons of people, Joan, have vanished on the Appalachian Trail. Tons of people. And when I say missing 411, what we're dealing with is stories where you can rule out the usual suspects. You can rule out predatory action. You can rule out somebody getting, for the most part, disoriented and lost. These are things where a lot of the normal answers get ruled out because you wouldn't believe the searches that go on in these situations. So the father immediately starts running downhill down a trail, yelling out his son's name. He goes for like 2 miles. He hadn't found anything. He comes back up. And so obviously they call the authorities, and the next thing you know, they've got hundreds of people scouring the mountainside. And bizarrely, eventually the Green Berets come in, which is not something they do. Green Berets, usually, if they're called into something like that, they're called in to look for a criminal. They're not called in to retrieve a lost person or body. So the thing is, the Green Berets wouldn't communicate with anybody. They were not sharing information with the Forest Service or the other people involved. They were doing their own thing. They were looking around. So nothing. They got nothing. Okay, there was nothing. I think eventually, years and years later, they found one of his shoes. But here's the ultra creepy part. After this made the news, eventually another family came forward saying they had come to the park and they asked one of the rangers, we really want to see some bears. Where would be the best area to go to see bears? And the guy told them, your best chance of catching a bear site is going to be up this trail and then there. And it was an area probably 2 or 3 miles away from Spence Field. Well, what happened was they're going up this mountain, and they hear this ungodly shriek. And then the next thing you know, they look up and they see this thing. Some of them described it like is like a man wearing a fur coat. The son thought it was a bear, but it had something slung over its shoulder. It looked sort of like somebody dressed in clothes. And the son said, "Look, Daddy, there's a bear." And the dad said, "That's not a bear." And it ran off. That was that. And the thing is, that information, the authorities totally ignored. They didn't deal with that. They wouldn't deal with that information, even though this family came forward. And really, that's the end of that poor kid's story. Something took him, and it did it stealthily right in front of these people. Okay? The father was looking at the bush the whole time. And that's just one example. Another one I'll give you real quick. I think it was in the Sierra Nevada mountains in a camp. This one has a slightly better ending. In a campground somewhere in the Sierra Nevadas in California, this kid's like literally like 3 years old, and they just got there to the campground. The kid's like 15 feet away from his father on the campground. Father turns his back to do something, turns right back around. The kid is gone. He's not meandered somewhere. Joe knows this story. He is gone. And within a really short time, after looking around and, of course, calling his name and trying to find him, they've got people all over once again, all over the mountainside, scouring the mountainside. Couldn't find him. Well, I don't remember the amount of days, but it was like 3 days later, 2 or 3 days later, they found this kid. They went way out the normal search area. This kid was, remember, he's like 3 years old, 2 or 3, 12 miles away up the mountain and across frigid rivers, and he was sitting on a ledge, and he was perfectly fine. There is no way that, even if you know who the Les Stroud is, Survivor Man, one of the most badass people I know of.
Right.
Later on, he put that trip to the test. He couldn't do it. He couldn't do it in the allotted time.
Oh, he tried it.
Yes, this kid. And kids, like, they haven't developed at that point to where they obviously can't cross a not frozen, but close to freezing river. But kids, when they do typically get lost and disoriented in the mountains, it's their natural inclination to go downhill, not uphill. That's the natural inclination. How did this kid get there? What took him there? It wasn't a big cat. It wasn't a bear.
Did the kid say anything?
No. Here's the other most bizarre part about almost all these missing 411 cases. The people that are found alive, and I'll give you another story that I discovered, of all things, my mother-in-law's People magazine, which I loathe that thing, but it was just sitting there and I looked at it, I'm like, holy crap, this is a classic missing 411 story. And I'll get to that in a minute. But the thing is, the people that get taken and that do come back, they're either too young to articulate what happened, or they have some kind of, I don't want to use a totally out-of-date word like retardation, but they have something going on with their brain where they can't articulate well anyway. That's a common thing. Lots of people with conditions are taken. And even the ones that should be able to, whether they're adults or children, don't remember what happened. They don't remember. They have a blackout. So
there's always lost time situations, or they can't describe what happened to them.
Yeah, they're just like totally blank. Now, sometimes there are some interesting interpretations of what happened. So this was about 2 years ago, right in January. Might have been January of 19 or 18. I don't remember now. But I was thumbing through this People magazine, and I see this article about this kid. So this is North Carolina on the coast. So the mountains are off in the western part of North Carolina. The coast is really low, flat. And this was an area where there was a tree farm that his grandmother lived on, and it had rained incredibly that year. And so everything was swampy and boggy. And it was a really cold year, too, for them up there. So this kid's 3 years old. He's playing out back with 2 other kids in his grandmother's backyard. The 2 other kids come back in, and he doesn't come in. So grandmother goes outside thinking he's just still out there playing. He's nowhere to be found. She's looking at the edge of the yard off into the woods. She's calling his name. Classic scenario like I keep describing. It's funny, when I look at my face in the viewer, I automatically cock my head for some reason. Anyway, so usual scenario, they get people out, they get a search crew going. They can't find him. These guys are in frigid every night. It's going below freezing and it's soaking wet. They're walking in waist deep water in these woods and they're not finding anything. And this is a common feature of these missing 411 stories. A lot of the areas where these people eventually are found, whether they're dead or alive, are areas that had already been searched multiple times. Because these people comb over the same areas over and again to make sure before they expand their search. So 3 days later, this woman's jogging down the road and she hears this kid crying, coming from the woods. And there's a group of searchers not like but a few hundred yards from her. So she runs up to them and says, there's some kid in the woods over here. So they have to literally go into the woods, and these are adults going up to their waist in water, cold ass water. And they come to an area where the ground is raised, and the kid's sitting on dry ground on a little mound, just a small mound right above the water. And he's not hypothermic, but he's getting there. He's kind of like, I don't know, like getting towards the state, a little scratched up, but perfectly fine. They rescue him. They bring him in. First of all, they're like, how could a 3-year-old kid survive 28-degree weather in soaking wet, conditions? His clothes weren't wet. Okay. And if he were walking his way to that mound by himself, he would be up to here in water. So eventually, of course, they're just overjoyed that they've got their boy back, the parents and the grandparents, right? So at first they don't even think to ask. But you know what happened when they asked him? How did you survive through this? And he said, the talking bear saved him. Yep. That's in the People magazine and the newspapers. Let's think about this. He's 3 years old. He's probably never heard of Bigfoot. He's probably seen pictures of cartoon bears and other bears. They're big. They're hairy. I mean, I am speculating. I can't say I know what happened. I just thought it was fascinating that he said the talking bear saved him.
So you think in that situation, a Bigfoot guided him?
Well, but we also got to ask, why did he go missing? Did the talking bear take him to begin with? See, this is a duplicated story. There was a story like that back in years ago where a girl, her father was a miner, and he was out mining, and she would go with him, and she decided to go up the hill and hang out for a while. And this is back in the days when we let our kids do whatever, right? We weren't all helicopter moms and dads. And she went missing. And once again, took a couple days to find her, but she came back home by herself. She was fine. She was maybe 4. She said that the talking monkey stayed with her and kept her warm and fed her. So I don't know. Now, those are incidents where possibly there was an actual physical animal. We don't know how he disappeared, Diane. That's a mystery. We'll never know. And of course, all he could do is reference it somehow with the talking bear. But what I know about bears is in North Carolina in January, in those conditions, they're hibernating. Okay. Secondary, bears aren't born. It's just like chimpanzees. People watch these old movies with these friendly chimps thinking they can go up to a chimpanzee. They'll rip your arms off. Bears are not friendly to humans. They're obviously wary of us and probably want to keep away. But I just can't imagine a scenario where a black bear is lifting this child and talking to him and saving him. So it just made me think of all this when this guy said that's what's going on, because there are plenty of mysterious deaths where people literally seem to vanish into thin air. I mean, hundreds, if not thousands of cases. And it's in our state parks and our federal parks. And it's sometimes even outside of that on private land, once again, caveat is, I can't vouch for any of this guy's story. Mark Barnes, if y'all look up Mark Barnes, The Trail to Bigfoot, or Google it, I'm sure you will come across this. Or better yet, go to Bigfoot Odyssey, Mark Barnes, and pull up his interview. It is lengthy. You got to set aside some time to watch it. But, maybe y'all look at it and see a whole different set of details that I don't see. You may say, "Oh, this is absolute BS." This guy, I just want to know what his motive is, if it is, and it could well be. I don't know the guy from Job, right? But a fascinating and terrifying story.
Right.
Now, I've never had anything like that in my experience. But I really did recently. I had an experience that I've read about by many people. Yes, Yogi the Bear was talking.
He loved picnic baskets.
Hey, boo-boo.
That was pretty good.
So, like, I've always heard about this scenario happening, and it's never happened to me until in the last, it was about 2 months ago. I was out in one of my research areas, and this thing, you pull off the road and you pull in, and even when you get deep into the woods, you can sort of still hear the cars. Like, there's that David Byrne lyric where he's like, and she can hear the highway breathing. I know what he means. He means like the sound of cars going by is kind of like a breath when it's in the distance, right? Like an exhalation or something. So you can sort of hear the cars off in the distance. But then, of course, you're in the woods, and so you've got frogs, insects, there's birds going. And I was walking through the woods on my own, and I've never gotten any really spooky vibes in there previously. I mean, I've found some really, really cool stuff. Things that just don't seem to add up in terms of what nature would do. And I use that word loosely because everything's nature, right? You and me, Sasquatch, nature, you know what I mean? So I'm walking down this path in the woods, and then it was like flicking a light switch. Everything shut down. And it was, what is that cliche? The silence was deafening. It was so dead quiet. It was freaking me out. I'm like, why in this whole forest? And there may be some perfectly mundane other explanation that a biologist would be able to tell me. I admit that, right? But it was like, for me, walking, this is why did everything just turn off? And I felt, and it's probably just the panic in me about it. I wouldn't say panic, but I felt like I was being watched. And so I turned on the camera, I was like, I'm going to document this just in case, and it lasted for about 10 minutes, and then everything turned back on again.
Wow.
So
Greg is talking about an incident where they turned his audio recorder off.
Hey, Greg, I think I've seen some of your posts on one of our mutual Bigfoot sites where you've got a nature area where you're getting audio and some visuals.
Oh, right on. So he's another researcher.
That name, if I'm not mistaken, that's the same guy. He's somewhere up like in New Jersey. Greg, you in New Jersey? I haven't even looked at it. So single-minded.
A few other things that made me think that maybe he was. He seems to be describing an interaction that he had where he was told not to play games with his family and said to me, I don't play games, this entity that he interacted with.
Okay, well, that's true. And based on what I know or think I know, yes, these things, they're not loners. They're not like, they're not, they live in family groups. And even beyond that, the evidence seems to suggest they have tight-knit family groups, and those family groups are loosely connected to clans. And so the general saying is when you see one or hear one or one's by, they're not alone. There's going to be 2 or 3 more with them. So I probably told you about this the last time, but when I was in Saluda, because I got this is a message I directly received, not in the form of telepathy, much more physical. But an area where I'd gotten a lot of evidence up in the mountains in Saluda, North Carolina, right on the Green River. I'm walking down, a few hundred yards off the river on the mountainside. And I'm one of those knuckleheads. Yep, I'm going to pick up a stick, even though that guy that being told him it's not tree knocking. It's their conversation. I don't know how much I think that's completely true, because I've seen a lot of areas where perfectly good trees have a lot of bark knocked off of them, like 8 feet up. So anyway, yeah, I'm one of those people. I will pick up a hard branch and I will knock the tree because I have gotten results from it. I have gotten tree knocks back. So I picked up this branch and I knocked it against the tree. And so let's get my arm straight. So this side of me is going up the mountain where I'm walking, and this side is going down the mountain. So I do the tree knock, and then immediately from up the mountain comes this rock, this big. I was actually looking for a better branch after doing that tree knock. So I was looking at the ground and I saw the rock come down and hit another rock and bounce off. And I'm talking, this came in with baseball pitcher speed. It wasn't rolling down the mountain. There was even too much brush for a rock that size to tumble down the mountain, way too much thicket. This thing came down at a sharp angle, hit within 2 inches of my foot. And the clear message to me was, yeah, we're here, motherfucker. Keep going. Like, we got no interest in playing games with you. I do think people can build relationships of some sort with these beings by repeated visits. When you enter into their territories and they haven't experienced you yet, what are they going to do? These are people. People are dangerous. You know? Yes, they're huge and strong and agile and cat-like in their ability to move, but we're still really dangerous. You know? We tear down the forest. We have high-powered weaponry. You know, bringing all this crazy technology. All these researchers that go in there with most high-tech. You know, I go in there with my phone, and if I find something I want to film, I will. Most part, what I've learned is the more high-tech gear you bring in, they just get that much more clever. You're not going to find them. Like the general saying in the field of studying Sasquatch is camera traps, although they have caught some very interesting things over the years, they call them squatch repellent. They know they're there. They sense something about them, whether it's the infrared signal or maybe the hum, but they know they're there. They know how to avoid them. Sometimes they rip them off the trees. So I've never set up that kind of thing. The people that I know that have gotten the most incredible stuff are the people that go in there to the same spot day after day, year after year, and bring a guitar or a flute or drums, just hang out. You know, I got a couple of friends, one of them up in North Georgia. He goes in there at night. I'll be honest with you, I just don't have the cojones to go in there at night.
You don't ever go at night?
I have, and it's absolutely terrifying. It utterly shakes me to my core. I'm a person that, you know, the whole reason I'm into any of these subjects, whether it's ghosts or UFOs or Bigfoot or Slender Man or, you know, spontaneous human combustion, is because my childhood was freaky. I mean, it really was. I was a kid that was, I guess I'd have to call them hallucinations, but I was having very vivid hallucinations at a very young age. And I was unfortunately a kid that was pretty screwed up by all that stuff. You know, I remember being like 5 and making my sister sit in the chair next to me until I fell asleep with the light on, you know, that kind of thing. I would see things right in my physical space. And it wasn't like a positive experience for me. The interesting thing is it made me really intrigued by all this at the same time. But for me, I lived most of my life at night pretty well terrified. And I've been out there in the woods at night. And of course, your imagination can just get the best of you in the woods at night. You know, I mean, that's one of those things. But I have had some of the experiences I've had in the daytime out there at night. And I can't pretend to know exactly what these things are and what their intentions are. Like, all these people know exactly what they are. They're here to save us from our own selves, and they're, you know, who knows what the deal is. But I do believe there's a paranormal aspect to it based on my experience. They seem to sense things about us and can pick up on stuff. And I have had close friends say that yes, they have put words into their head. Sometimes it's like, don't go any further. You need to turn around. Which is interesting because it's not saying I'm coming to eat you alive. It's saying you're getting too close to an area you don't need to be. You need to turn around. Like, what if that's the little maternity area? They have children. You know what cracks me up about people who don't know anything about this subject and laugh at it? I've had them legitimate. These are intelligent people. When you bring up something like a family of Bigfoot, and they'll say, "You mean there's more than one?" I'm like, oh, that's right. There's that one Bigfoot that's dotting around the whole world doing, you know, posing for the camera. It's a breeding.
Tons of people think that.
They think that about Loch Ness Monster. You know, how does that happen? It's like, it cracks me up. Oh, legitimately asking me there's more than one. It reminded me of, it's when people it's a subject they're not familiar with, so their brain doesn't go there. It reminds me of the time that when I was managing a kitchen up in Athens. And my sister, very bright woman, she's a nurse. And she came up to visit, And then they wanted to come in for lunch. And she said, well, what time do you open? And I said, well, the kitchen opens at 11:30. And then she just happened to ask, well, what time do you go there? And I said, well, I get in there at about 9 o'clock. And she actually said, well, why do you go in there at 9 if it's not open until 11:30? I said, oh, that's right. I walk in the kitchen and I flip the switch and everything makes itself. It's like, you got to cook the food, Becky. You know, those kind of like just, it's because somebody's just not familiar with the subject. You know, that's like we experienced with, I could tell you, I could take our buddy Robert into places that would make him shit his pants. He would not come back going, there's nothing to this subject. Okay. When he's heard a vocalization that is clearly not a wolf or a coyote or an owl, and he's gotten the tree knocks, especially the ones that sound like trees knocking on trees, not like me with a bat or whatever.
Right.
When you hear the bipedal footsteps of something massive that sounds like it's rushing right at you, which I've had, and yet you're not seeing anything there in front of you that's coming at you, it changes you, man. It makes you go, okay, I think I got to get out of here. And I love you, Robert. I'm just telling you. I don't know if you're listening. You probably aren't, but you would absolutely, you'd be terrified in some of these places, and you would have. I'm not saying you come out a believer. Once again, I don't accept believers. It doesn't have to be that way, but it will make you think. There are things that we still haven't figured out. Do you know they just discovered a new species of a 40-foot whale in the ocean?
Really?
Yes. I think it was out in the.
I didn't know that, but I do know they discover things all the time, and I don't understand these people that feel like they know everything.
It's that we're so pompous as a species. You know what I mean? Like we've done it all, we've owned it all, we've seen it all. Like, and how joyless is that? To think that what's all been done. I guess I'll go back and do some more laundry and eat a tuna sandwich. But it's like that's where, even though this stuff frightened me, that's where the real magic is for me, because I know that it's there. And I'm not saying it's truly magic. Everything is just, it is explainable by some type of science, but it's just a science or a study that we haven't gotten to yet.
Right.
Extrasensory perception clearly happens. You still have people in Skeptic magazine saying it's total bullshit. I have had moments of uncontrolled extrasensory perception. I couldn't wield it. It just happened. I've had dreams that were premonitions. I dreamed of my father dying. I hadn't talked to my father in 2 years. I get up that morning, I go in the studio to record. I get a call from my mom, your father just died. That kind of thing. That's not, you can call it coincidence if you want, but there is more going on there.
The night my first son was born, my mother had a dream that my grandfather was holding a baby, and he introduced the baby to her and everything. And when she woke up, my grandfather had died in the night and my son was born.
Oh, wow.
It's fascinating. Yeah. Now, I believe in that kind of stuff too. I believe there's plenty of stuff that I don't know about and can't explain.
Yeah. And it's not to say, no, there aren't frauds in every field, because there are. That's true. That doesn't mean that it's all discountable. There's plenty of real meat there to study. And I guess, and I said this much earlier in the interview here, but let's call this a discussion. Interview some way.
Yeah, it's a discussion.
Not big grade. What frustrates me most is these so-called, there's nothing wrong with being skeptical, obviously. It's, have you looked into the matter, or are you just going by the occasional local news story that brings up the subject and makes a joke out of it?
I'll take it further. I think there is something wrong with being skeptical.
Well, it can be a bias that cripples you, actually. True.
It does.
Yeah.
It makes even the most educated people, actually, the more educated you are, the more affected by this you are. It cripples your ability to think.
Yeah, it does.
And at the same time, you get this virtue signaling reinforcement from all of your friends and pat each other on the back that you don't know how to think.
Right.
And mock anyone that dares to.
Oh boy, they come out in droves. You know what it's like, Shawn. You know what it's like better than anybody else. I've seen plenty of your threads, and I applaud you. I love how you drop these bombs in on your comment section. Not only is the bomb truthful, and that's the main thing, no, it's going to bring out the jackals it's going to bring out the vultures, and they do, and they come down to try to pick your bones clean with just nothing but meanness, not a legitimately. It's one thing to say, well, Shawn, I don't necessarily agree with that. Could you give me more information so that I can feel like I know a little bit more about it? No, they come down with the fucking.
Oh, they're vicious. They're vicious. And
they've drawn me
every time. They can't dispute what you're saying. They can't make any kind of claim. And they're always ableist and go right after, you're a moron. You are so stupid. They can't function in a conversation. They can't have one. And yet at the same time, they'll keep acting like they made points. It's weird. It's a weird form of I don't know how to describe it. It's a mental defect.
So when you get called a conspiracy theorist or a wacko tinfoil hat nut job, the thing about this is these people that do this, they're telling you the information that you're looking at is absolutely absurd, usually without having actually looked at it themselves. And that doesn't mean I'm saying I'm always right. I've bought into stories plenty of times that turn out to be BS. That's just part of life, right? But the thing is, when they're trying to tell you need to stick to the status quo information that's already been approved and stamped by the authorities, it's like, look, we all know that information. We're spoon-fed it from birth. I know that side of the story. It doesn't matter what story you're talking about. We all know that side of the story. Why not move over here and look at another side? And there's not just one more side. There's infinite numbers of angles to look at.
And how many things are there just one side of anyway?
Right, but they'll tell you there's only one truth, and this is it. And I'm not going into politics, but I'm just going to use a name. We all know Dr. Fauci said, and I'm like, well, you know what? Actually, back in March, Dr. Fauci also said this. It totally contradicts.
Yeah, right. They don't give a shit about that.
Yeah.
No, they don't care. It's only the information that they've been told to push, and they push it, and that's why they're dangerous. That's why they're enemies.
Well, that's the thing. Now we are going here, so for a minute. I've got a few friends here in Savannah. Usually they're in the either art or music crowd. And for the first time in my life, I've disagreed with them on many issues for many years. But this is the first time I've actually considered them to now be dangerous. The time is done where I can try to have a dialogue with them and get them to see a little something. They are now advocating for snooping on people. I'm sure you got them where you are. There's a couple Facebook pages here. They're all about doxing people. They look for businesses where the owner might have said something 4 years ago, shut them down.
Yes.
This is where we're going. And it's like, this is dangerous. This person is dangerous. I'm going to probably have to start considering. It's a horrible thing to contemplate. Do I have to consider who I'm talking to and whether they're going to end up trying to shut my hot sauce business down?
You do.
Even with the old Trump thing, I'm not supporting Trump, guys. I don't support any politician. I don't know. The whole grab him by the pussy thing, come on. My God. Anybody that's naive enough to think that men and women don't talk that way. I have been in restaurants where young girls right next to me with a few drinks in them are saying stuff that makes that look like nothing. And so what? Who gives a fuck? I mean, sure, maybe when it's an older man, it sounds rapey, one of those new words they like to throw out there. He's rapey. But everybody does this stuff, and they want to pretend that they're totally innocent from ever saying a nasty thing about some other person. Come on. We're all human. We do all kind of fucking bizarre shit, and we do stuff we might not even be proud of. But it's no reason to shut a person's life down. This
cancel culture is way out of hand. Did you see what happened to the lady from The Mandalorian, the actress from The Mandalorian? Yes. They ruined her career. I'm sure they'll blacklist her from Hollywood over a tweet that was actually factually correct.
Well, yeah, I got into a few rows with people on that online, and this one girl came out telling me, how could you support this anti-Semite? I said, anti-Semite, did you know? And so I brought the quotes up. I said, here's what she said. Now find in there anything that's anti-Semitical for you, okay? What she said was the environment for the Nazis was not a dry one where nothing had been done and then suddenly just march in and bring you. They had carefully groomed that environment to get their neighbors to hate them first. Yes. That's all she fucking said. That's true. That's what's happening now. And everybody takes her out of context or totally misrepresents what she said. And I was like, my blood was, well, it was one of those nights where I got drawn out, my blood was boiling. I'm like, man, I got to have a drink. I just can't deal with it. You know, like, and I've got to let it go because I know that's out there everywhere. People, this is, and I sound like a broken record. I know that there's a million dystopian books and movies that all touch on this stuff. But the single story to me that hits home the most is still 1984. Everybody in 1984, while on the one hand, completely in support of Big Brother, also all walking around nervous and looking over their shoulder all the time, fearful that they might actually upset the system or Big Brother by saying the wrong thing and then being taken away. That's where we are. That's where we are. You know, yes, the technical details of the story, of course, you know, was written and published in 1948. They couldn't totally get where, but they did get the big thing, the telescreen. Okay, they got that. And, you know,
he got a lot right.
Yeah, and that guy was he was a member of the Council on Foreign Relations of the Fabian Society. So it's really not. It's probably loosely.
Yeah, he wasn't prolific. He was involved. He was inside the inner circles. He was at the little parties. He heard these things. He knew where we were heading.
Absolutely. It's in the guy's fiction, but it was the rough plan. It's a roadmap. And boy.
Yeah. Well, him and Aldous Huxley would write each other about who would get it right. They knew the agenda, but who's going to have it right? You know, would it be more of a futuristic version like Brave New World, or would it be like 1984? And it's kind of a melding of the two.
Yeah, I think Huxley got it right was we would be begging for our own enslavement at this point, and we're all medicated as fuck.
They're both right.
The bad stuff, you know what I mean? The drug companies are making trillions while everybody's just covering, putting a Band-Aid on everything instead of dealing with their pain. I'm guilty of it. I prefer to hide from my pain. You know, there's a saying I saw not too long ago, and you could replace the word pain with fear, but it said everything you want is on the other side of fear. But you got to go there. You got to be willing to go there. You got to quit. I got to quit, you know, taking those shots of whiskey and move through that pain or whatever that past stuff is in my life that happened when I was a kid. Because, you know, on the one hand, compared to many lives, I guess my life was pretty damn fucking good. But it was not without trauma at all. And it definitely affected me. I think the thing that affected me more than anything was my father, the man I looked up to, you know, telling me that I was nothing, literally looking at me and going, you know what, you're nothing. And I believed it. You know, I'm 5 years old. What am I supposed to believe? And that's what people do. And so, you know, it's on me to figure that out. And if I don't figure it out, it's just going to hurt me, right? Oh, we're getting back off the rant, Tammy. We're going to go back into something like, I don't know, Slender Man. I don't know. What do you want to talk about? I'm just, you know,
what do you know about Slender Man? I only know what they were talking about when all those kids were getting into it. And there was those one girls that had killed their friend or tried to kill their friend for Slender Man. What is this Slender Man thing? What's going on with that?
Well,
Second time that I heard you say it.
Either, but some dude probably 12 years ago, and that's so it wasn't 12 years ago, it was 10. I don't know. It was roughly 10 or 12 years ago. Actually, yes, Ron, exactly. Or move through the fear. If you can't go without it, at least move through it. So this guy created this creepy photo like on a playground. It was a photo contest. And it had this tall, slender thing with like multiple arms coming out of its back, just in the background watching the children.
Right.
But here's the cool detail about Slender Man. So eventually, this thing took on a life of its own, okay? It went wildly viral on the internet, especially with young people. So
that was through like fan fiction, right? Wasn't it Slender Man fan fiction?
There's two girls that wound up trying to kill their friend in the name of Slender Man. You know, they got caught doing that. But what some people have speculated, and I find this interesting. I know everybody knows this thing where there are people that will say, you manifest your reality. Now, I don't know if I buy into that or not, but there are people that will tell you your thoughts are created. You're basically, your thoughts are creating a painting, and then you're walking into that reality, right? And especially when you're talking about on a collective level. When you got lots of people, whether they're living in fear or they're living in joy, or whatever, they're collectively building this thing. The very thing we might be complaining about is the thing we just got to quit complaining about because they're creating it. So there's some of these people saying that Slender Man has actually become a thing just based on collective belief. Same thing with what's called the rake, which is this horrifying humanoid thing that's on all fours and it looks like a skeleton. There's a famous photo out there that's almost guaranteed to be a fake, but it is really creepy. It's all over the internet. It's on all fours. It's skeletal. It's wicked looking. But you have to accept maybe that could be true. Could we manifest something really into physical form with collective thought? Enough people around the world are like, hey, Slender Man. And then it takes shape. Now, I don't know, because once again, that's going into a realm I'm fascinated by, but I haven't personally experienced Slender Man. I just think it's another one of those fascinating things.
I found that a very fascinating theory while you were saying it too, and it made me think a lot. Have you ever read the book It by Stephen King?
Yes, long time.
Pennywise.
Yep.
That's what kind of being he is. He just manipulates your fears. He has no form. Like, people didn't understand the TV movie because at the end he was a spider. The reason why he was a spider is because they were all afraid of spiders. There were times when he was a werewolf. There were times when he was different things. They shapeshift and manifest to form your
worst fears.
Yes, whatever's or what you're gonna understand or relate to. I think that as far as these shape-shifting beings, they would use your mind to pull their form from.
Right. It's almost like it's a chicken egg thing too, right?
Yeah.
And so are there these potentials that are out there, wherever out, when I say out there, I mean in just the nebulous whatever, the Jungian dreamscape out there. Are there all these potentials? Any potential is out there just waiting for the right collection of thoughts to bring it down and manifest it into something that we view as physical reality. Why isn't it possible? But I know that I've had these at least telepathic type experiences that showed me something. Everything is physical? Thoughts are physical. Everything is wave form. Okay. And then I'll tell you, once you condense it down, it goes into particle form, but it's still really what they call a wavicle. It's a particle and a wave at the same time. So everything is just waves of energy. So there seems like the potential for anything is there. That's why the whole thing with like the parallel universe theory and the Mandela effect fascinating. I mean, there was a point where in the Mandela effect I dismissed it, but I got back to it and I'm like, I don't think I can totally dismiss this. Like,
hey, the Mandela's real.
Yeah,
it's the Berenstein Bears, 100%.
Right. But
it's not Stain. So I would not have had a problem with reading Stain as a child. I remember not knowing if it was Steen or Stein. I used to struggle with that as when I was little because I love those books.
A-I-N, like Einstein. It's not A-I-N.
Yeah, but no, they say it was Stain, which I would have been able to read that. I wasn't confused whether it was Stain or Stein. I was confused whether it was Stein or Steen.
Mm-hmm. So let's think about the potentials here, because we're both on board with thinking there really is something to it. So, all right, let's consider we live in some kind of computer simulation, and we actually have software developers are dreaming us up all the time. Right. It might be in their own humor to fuck with us sometimes and throw a wrench into the system. Hey, everything was this way, now we're going to make it that way, and we don't mean from this point forward. We mean retroactive now. So that book you got from 1968 that was the Berenstein Bears, that book now, the name has changed. That's what's creepy. I started looking at these passages in some Bibles, the changes in the Bible passages, and I've got a 150-year-old Bible. And I went back and I'm like, holy fuck, it's not the same. It's like the words magically changed in the Bible. From these well-known passages. I mean, I'm not even a Bible guy, right?
Well, I had a thought with that as far as theories go, because I feel I'm working on a theory of my own. It's kind of a melding. Things form in my head and take shape. So it's like a bunch of theories that are melding together. But with this creation and matrix theory, they're marrying in my head, because in a created existence, if this world is created by God, then everything is a simulation, really, if you really break it down logically. And then what if we're collectively creating it as we go along with our collective mind? Right. And that is what is real. So when you go to observe something, if it changes in the collective mind, it changes all across existence as what's accepted as real now. So that was my thought, that maybe we're manifesting our reality, if you want to take that all the way to the furthest extent, as a group.
Right.
And it is created. Yeah. And that's my simulation theory that I'm working on, kind of a marriage of.
Right. It'd be almost like reality says, oh, you're thinking like this now. I got to catch up and change the script.
Yeah. Whenever the general consensus changes something, like it takes the S' off Chuck E. Cheese, that's changes now. Or when the Home Depot becomes just Home Depot,
I love the minutia. I love the minutia of the Mandela effect. There's some really subtle details like that are clear,
Mm-hmm.
And I love talking about people. One of the things I always ask, and I'm not even a Star Wars guy, I'm like, was it Luke, I am your father, or no, I am your father? Everybody I know that remembers the movie is like, it's Luke, I am your father. But if you go pull a video from back when that movie came out, it is now no, I am your father, which, like I said, it's retroactive. Not only are we changing now in the future, we got to change the past to catch up with all this stuff.
Yeah.
That's where it's really crazy.
That's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. It's a change in existence. And they changed it all the way back. And sometimes they change again. Like there's been 2 or 3 Mandelas. I can't think of an example off the top of my head right now, which is making me look like an ass, but that have flipped back, that were a Mandela and then flipped again.
Yeah.
So I thought for a while I was chasing this rabbit down the hole, that maybe they were manipulating reality with the experiments that they're doing at CERN with the Hadron Collider.
I heard about that. Yeah.
And that's an interesting way of looking at it too, altering reality. But yeah, you're right. It's the timeline changed completely.
Yeah.
And you go back and look at this stuff, and it doesn't matter that you can see it clear as day as Luke, I am your father. He doesn't say that anymore.
Right. And so it's even weirder.
Or in Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal never says hello, Clarice.
I know. And there are tons of other examples that go way back in history, like James Cagney never said you dirty rats, but he's well known for you dirty rats,
There's tons.
So if you think about it, you've got a group of people, let's just for argument's sake say it's 50-50. That's not always the case because, like I said, with the Star Wars question, everybody I know says it's Luke, I'm your father. But some of these things are way more split, like Mandela himself. I know about 50% of the people I've talked to think Mandela got out of prison, became president, and they died. And then another half of that believe he died in prison.
You know what's weird for me is it's like I experience a lot of the Mandelas, but I don't experience that one because I remember him getting out of prison, becoming president, and then dying.
So what's interesting about it is if you've got people that see it one way, and it's not that their memory is illegitimate. It's not like I'm right and wrong, like all these political debates. 2 different groups of people seeing life and remembering it differently. So in a sense, we're walking hand in hand. We're sharing the same environment, but we're also experiencing a different reality at the same time. And, that's where it really gets interesting because they've done tests, they know that our brains have certain filters and different people have different filters. That's like, these whole things on Facebook, like is the dress green, or does it have a big boob on it, or is the shoes green, or is it spotted pink and blue, that kind of thing, right? That's literally filters. Some people's filters, their brain sees it this way. And that's, so when we get all these crazy heated debates about the more negative stuff, it's like literally when there's an accident scene, you got 5 different people telling 5 different stories, they're all seeing their reality. It's not just that they're on the other side of the street, which it does, of course, give them a different visual vantage point. Their filters have allowed them to see a certain part of that accident that nobody else can see. And so the problem is when we start debating this stuff, we all come to loggerheads because we're all right. That's where it really gets crazy. Somehow we're all mutually sharing this experience and yet having our own different interpretation of that experience.
It's all in your head.
Well, exactly. I love the Einstein quote. It's like reality is an illusion, albeit a persistent one. Yes. If you want to get really philosophical about it, when you wake up in the morning, you don't know that you won't get off your bed and fall down into a canyon. You don't know that won't happen. But it seems pretty reliable that it's not, that my feet are going to hit the floor and everything feels predictable. And that's what gets us locked down into these dogmas because everything seems to generally be kind of the same, even though it's all very mutable. And we all know that it's not even the idea of physical reality. The concrete certainly feels hard when you fall on it. But as you know, it's made up of particles where, like if you took the nucleus of an atom and blew it up to the size of a basketball, the next nearest particle is 30 miles away. There's
It's
nothing
mostly empty space. This table is mostly empty space.
Exactly. So that tells you there's got to be something pulling it together by belief. Something more than just, because otherwise I should be able to put my finger.
Well, they talk about it as the God particle, what's
That's
holding
right.
together existence. And that's what they're saying they want to manipulate with their experiments at CERN.
I tell you, man, scientists, and particularly these guys, intellectually brilliant motherfuckers, but they do shit just because they can. Because they just can't help it. It's like a kid, there's a candy bowl over. Well, I don't know if this is actually going to bring about something that's real desirable, but we got to see what happens. They just can't help it, fucking with everything, all the stories. And once again, these are things we can't verify, but the underground bases like a Dulce, with the genetic animal-human hybrid experiments down there. I don't know if you know much about Phil Snyder, but that to me is a very intriguing story. And he has the scars. I'm not saying the scars back up the story, but they're interesting scars. And he, once again, was a person that was killed, and it was ruled a suicide. So, do you know his story?
I hadn't heard of him, no.
So he was a guy, and I don't know if this was the 70s. It's been quite a while. In the 90s, in the 80s and 90s, I really dug down into UFO stuff. And eventually I kind of got out of it. I used to always think I was an alien abducted. I had these experiences, and I would tell people that it was a dream, but in my view, I wasn't having a dream. I was having a real experience that was terrifying me beyond anything. The only thing that even gets close to it is I have sleep paralysis or night terrors, that kind of level of fear. But eventually I just got to where I don't know. It might have just been some really horrible dreams I had, and they were just dreams. So, but it did get me to dig down deep into UFOs. Well, Phil Snyder was this guy who claimed he was they were digging down, working on a base, an underground base. And I can't remember if there was an explosion. If anybody here in the crowd knows more about this story than me, please, correct me or help me out. But something happened where his crew fell through the ground into a floor on an existing base. And right there were human soldiers, and he said 7-foot-tall reptilian alien soldiers. And a firefight ensued. And there were people shooting actual guns. So here's the thing. All of a sudden, this reptilian, it did something like he said, it just literally slapped its chest, and this like ray beam hit him, just knocked him back. It cut his fingers off and put this massive wound on his chest. And there was another guy who grabbed him, and he said the elevators in these bases, they don't run on cables or electricity. It's all magnetics. There are no wires. They move via magnets. This guy got him onto an elevator, and that guy was sacrificed. He was shot before he was able to get in the elevator. It's a pretty fantastic story. You can pull his name up, and he did speaking engagements in front of crowds, and he'll show you his fingers. If he could have caught them off on a bandsaw, I'm sure, right?
So they're just saying they appear to be cleanly severed, though.
Oh yeah, and this weird kind of arc too, and then the scar on his chest. And then, he had something like a cord or tied around his neck, like, it was ruled a suicide. This was a guy going out telling what's happening, and he winds up dead. Common story, right? We keep hearing that. Yes, Elon, what is that guy about, man? Elon Musk.
He's freaking me out, and
he creeps me out.
Yes,
he really does.
No, I'm worrying more and more about him. I feel like I was a little too accepting of him. Like I wanted to like him for a minute, but now I'm starting to know he's nefarious as hell.
Things that at one point sound like, well, that's not only brilliant and wise, it sounds wonderful. Greg says the government killed Phil Snyder. I believe that's who you're talking about.
I think so too.
So yeah, on the one hand, he's saying beware of AI, but he's wanting to hook us up to the cloud.
Oh, he's driving it. Yeah, he's pretending he's afraid. At the same time, he's steering the car.
He reminds me of like one of it was really well. He's right up there with Bill Gates in the evil category.
Fuck yeah!
Somebody in
man, and some of these pictures. There was a picture with his his partner and their new baby in front of a arrangement of cyborgs, and it's one of the creepiest pictures I've ever
I
seen.
haven't seen that. I'll have to pull that
Oh my
up.
God. It's terrifying. That he is leading the agenda towards basically Skynet that he describes as the worst thing possible for humanity, and he's leading it.
Yeah, that's what's so weird. On one side of his mouth, he's saying, beware of AI. It's not going to be anything good. And yet, hey, I want to get us hooked up to the whole system. So
Yeah, plug in, get the Neuralink.
you'll be able
Go
to
ahead and plug in so you can type on your phone without even moving your thumb. You can just think it.
Right.
And we totally won't monitor your thoughts. Don't worry about that.
Well, that's the part. It's like, okay, how's it? It's a runaway train. We know that. Like, it's going. Elon acts. Yes, Elon does act like AI. That's what it is. There's something wholly unnatural about that man himself.
And Zuckerberg, too. Yeah. He's like Zuckerberg in that way. Something's off about him. Something's weird about his humanity.
I love that picture. It shows Zuckerberg, and he's real pasty and pale with the kind of weird bang cut he's got. And he's got this crazy look on his face. And it's like, it was a meme, and it was like, he reminds me of the person that's been infected in the movie. And he's trying to keep it away from everybody, like in a zombie movie.
Yeah, it's from a Senate hearing. Yeah, I know what meme you're talking about. Yeah.
That was hilarious. I tell you what, I know memes are, in a way, it's like have long drawn out dialogues like this. We don't read books anymore, but there are so many clever memes out there. I can't say enough about how much I appreciate certain people's cleverness with using few words.
Thank you. I'm a meme and shit poster myself.
Well, it's a brilliant form of communication. The only thing for me when I write songs, it's lyrics. And for me, I'm not a Bob Dylan type. He writes books in his songs. Like I can't hear another. I know people love the guy, but I'm like, I can't listen to the 53rd verse. Okay, I'm all about concision and getting what I want to say down as tight as possible. So I understand, because I can't, like, I've tried to write even just short stories or vignettes. And I'm like, I got too much to work with here. There's too much room for flab. I want to get to the meat of it. And so memes of all types, they're cutting. There's some really sharp ones out there, and I do love that.
It's an art form. It really is.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, those guys, I don't know. It's a whole nother thing. Like, this guy just seems like he just came on the scene out of nowhere. Elon Musk. Like, when I first started hearing, I'm like, what the fuck is Elon Musk? Is that even a name?
Look, I think they do. I think when they don't really bust onto the scene out of nowhere, but they are faces and fronts for a different, deeper agenda.
Yeah.
That's what I think they are. And Zuckerberg did not create Facebook. It's LifeLog.
Right.
They just plugged his face into it, and they were like, now this is your company. You will be the face of it. You will be able to enrich yourself through it, but you will also be our scapegoat.
And we all just willingly gave over our shoe size, our birthday.
Right. Yeah. People will give everything to you, but we will blame you as well. And
at this point, I'm like, fuck it. Yeah, they know every detail about me. I did have some spooks put on my tail one time.
Really?
Yes. So I guess we didn't ever go over that.
They don't need to anymore, though. We've given them everything, and then we carry around tracking devices in our pocket that can constantly listen to us. And
like, you already know me. I'm a little guy. I'm a little fry. I'm not anything worth messing with. So screw it. Now, I know the IRS makes examples of little guys once in a while, just to show you who's boss. Like, but in general, they're looking for the big threats. And when these guys were put on my tail, the guy that, when I told him my story, he said, "Oh yeah, I worked when I was in training as a police officer. I actually worked a little bit with the CIA and the FBI." He said, "I guarantee you that based on your story, they put people in the jail." He said, "But probably over time they realized you weren't actually a big threat. Nobody knows you. You're not, you don't have a big voice in a big community." So they would have said, "Fuck it," But yeah, I did get myself a little bit of hot water, and I got some threats. I got some scary threats on my cell phone and in my email.
You think from your research? What'd you get yourself in hot water with?
I got myself in hot water in two separate incidents. The first one was in 2004 during the G8 summit, which came down here south of Savannah to Brunswick. And back then, 2004, I don't know if Facebook was around, but nobody was on it. And so the big thing everybody was still doing was forum, right? And the big art and music forum for Savannah was Savannah Underground. And let's see if I can try not to make this too long-winded. I noticed a post on Savannah Underground. We're going to be forming a protest show for the G8, against the G8 summit. And we want to have bands. We're going to have speakers. We're going to have food vendors. And we need to have somebody help with organizing the band part of it. Tons of musicians would chime in. I'm in. And, I'd look at it and think about it, but somebody had already grabbed it, and next week I'd see another post, same thing. I'm like, well, thought somebody had that. So this kept happening. And finally I sent them a private message and I said, seems like something's going on because you keep asking for somebody to do this and then you put another ad up. So, and they told me that everybody that had applied for this position for them had dropped the ball. Once they realized it involved actually having to do things and plan and work, they didn't want that. They just somehow wanted to have some position of authority. So I took it on. I thought this would be great. I think a G8 protest is awesome. And furthermore, I get to do something I've never done. I'm not really the most organized person. I'm going to have to own up and learn what I have to do here, because the whole thing was bands get on stage. They have they have the whole back section with the same drums and all that, but bands play for 15 minutes. You got to get them off the stage and the gear they got to take off, and within another 20 or 30 minutes, get the next band set up and do that all day long. So first I had to advertise for bands. That was the first thing, getting bands interested. There was no short of that because everybody wants to be a freaking rock star, right? So I started meeting with the couple that were putting this on, Kelly Gasink and William Pleasant. And eventually I went over to their apartment. And the first thing I saw was just nothing but giant communist posters on the wall. The worker party stuff, all that kind of thing. Okay, this is interesting. And they were pretty interesting characters. And so everything was moving along. And here's the thing now. So that some of these G8 protests, like when it came to Seattle years ago, like 2002 or whatever it was, that place was flooded with people coming from around the world. Well, somehow they did a scare job here in Savannah. There was nobody, not even my musician friends. They were like sending me messages, you're not going to take part in that protest show. Nobody came out. Downtown Savannah was ghosted. We're in this massive park that's a mile around, a big stage, 20 people there in this massive field. Okay, but I'm like, well, show's got to go on, right? So I'm doing my thing each day. It was running about 3 or 4 days. And then Kelly grabbed him one day and says, all these people had picket signs. They're like, Philip, come on. We're going on a picket march. We got to do it right now. You got to go. And I'm like, Kelly, I can't. I got to get this next band set up. I can't do it. She said, it'll work itself out. Don't worry about it. In my mind, I'm also thinking, I'm not a picket kind of guy. It's not that I think picketing is great. It's just not for me. Ron, thank you for your time and your input. And I hope you get some good rest.
I can't believe you got to work on a Saturday, Ron. What's up with that? No, but go ahead. Don't stop your story.
Well, so she goads me into it. I'm like, all right. It was for a good reason. It was 9/11. It was all the unanswered questions, or not all of them, but a number of, and everybody's picket sign was a different question. So our deal was to march through the squares of Savannah, because I don't know what you know about Savannah, but the whole downtown was built around squares, and the roads run into the square, and you got to go around the square. So we're marching through the squares. And here's the other thing about picketing I don't like, because chanting has always annoyed me. It becomes a mantra that becomes meaningless to me. Hell no, we won't go. Hell no, we won't. That stuff's just never my speed. So I really stayed out of the chanting. But we get to Broaden Street, which is one of the main drags down there. And oh my God, I've never seen anything like this in my life. A massive wall of military police with all that crazy looking like Lady Gaga's concert kind of garb on, you know what I mean? The full face mask, the bodyguards, the batons. We're walking past these guys, and I can't really see their eyes, but all I know is I can feel them looking at me like I'm the enemy, So I'm like, well, fuck it. I'm not getting ready to start shit with these guys. We walk around them and we go to this square that's next to one of the most popular spots in Savannah called Vinny Van Gogo's Pizza. That's pizza in town and also just the cool hangout, you know, tourists and locals alike. And we wind up in that square and all of the news media there. I'm talking CBS, NBC, CNN, MSN. This is on tape somewhere. I never saw it. But they're all there. And you know, this is like probably around June, early June or something. Was it getting towards summer or maybe late spring? And late spring in Savannah is hot as fuck, you know. And there's a reason I point that out. So we get there, we got our picket signs, and this girl, I don't even know these other people I'm picketing with, obviously. This girl holds up her picket sign and asks her question. And the dude with the microphone, and I don't remember now because this is so many years ago, plus I went into like I was seeing red like a bull, so I don't remember what, you know, whether it was CBS or CNN, but he had the big microphone. While she's asking the question and he's got the microphone up in the air, he starts laughing. And, you know, I'm generally a pretty gentle guy. Like I'm one of those guys, it takes a lot to really get me going. Something snapped in me, man. And I stood up and I said, "What the fuck are you laughing about?" And he looks over at me and next thing you know, all the cameras and microphones and people are looking at me. And I was like, shit, I'm in the spotlight now. What do I do? I was like, why are you laughing at a legitimate question? Why aren't you asking these questions? It's like, you're not a watchdog media. You push one narrative. I said, why do you not ever tell anybody what's going on in the Council on Foreign Relations? Why don't you ever talk about the Bilderberg meeting? And he got this goofy look on his face. He said something really stupid. Like, oh, we're just actually the little guys. I'm like, fuck you. You're not the little guys. And I was so full of rage. I had my picket sign and I threw it down. I said, fuck it, I'm done. And I went to the middle of the park and I sat down on this little area around the fountain. And this guy comes up to me with a notepad. And he asked me my name. And my immediate thought was, great, a real journalist wants to talk to me and really give some information. And I gave him my name. And then another guy that looked a lot like that guy, he asked my name. And this is exactly what happened next. The guy that got there first looked at him and said, "Your fucking mind, I was here first." Here's the thing, because I was so blinded by my rage, I wasn't thinking straight. And it was all in retrospect or thinking about it in reflection. All those fucking news people, it's hot weather. They were literally in fucking Bermuda shorts and golf shirts with big goofy name tags on. These guys were the fucking men in black. They were in black suits with black sunglasses and no identification. So they both asked me my name, and I gave my name, and they said, what's your age? And at the time I said 37. And they said, and where were you born? And I said, Savannah, Georgia. And they said, thank you. You walked off. And I was like, what did I just do? What did I fucking just do? Really freaked me out. And then, I don't know, maybe a month later or something, I got an email that freaked me out big time from an unknown. I checked the IP address. It was way up north somewhere. I went to my brother's house in a panic, like the most paranoid kind of panic you can imagine. He's telling me to quit freaking out and being an idiot. You know, I never went back to the email ever again. I should have screenshot it, you know, but I just log out. I'm gone. I never went back to the email ever again. And then so later, I had one of my bands that I had. There was a police officer that ended up being a guitar player in my band, and I brought this subject. I mean, he was the one that said, "Oh, I can guarantee you that this guy's on your phone." And eventually, he probably does not. The other thing I won't get into, I'll just tell you what it was. I looked into a death of a banker here in our river. When I say banker, I mean like Freddie Mac, Sally Mae, that kind of a banker.
Right.
And I started poking into it, and I got some threats because it was rule of drowning. Here's the thing: they cremated him immediately. The funeral home lied and said in the paper that the funeral was pending. And so I called a couple days later and acted like I was a family member, saying we've got to know when this funeral is, because he wasn't from Savannah. The papers, the obituary said he was from Savannah. He was from Richmond, Virginia. This guy was from Old Money. And I pressed him. I said, look, we don't have any more time to wait. He had to know I was lying because he knew there were no family members here in Savannah. He said, I'll just go ahead and tell you, we cremated him immediately and shipped him back up to Richmond. Well, I called one of my police officer friends and I said, if a body dies in water, if a human dies in water and nobody witnessed the person dying, isn't an autopsy just protocol? Absolutely, every time. And you know about all these banker suicides since like 2011, where they're jumping out of high-story buildings or having 2 bullets put in the back of the head, a little suicide. I'm like, what's going on? There's like 80 bankers dying like this. This one slipped under the radar. So he did. Nobody else. I looked on. Nobody ever picked up on it other than me and my friend. And I got threatened. I got a tweet that scared the shit out of me. Not a tweet, a text that scared the shit out of me. So yeah, they, like you said, they're controlling the narrative, and sometimes they have to quiet people down. I knew we weren't going to go here, but I don't know why I do, because it is important, I guess. And I of course want to bring it back around to the fun stuff. The one thing I want to point out about so-called conspiracy theory, any of you people can just tell anybody when they come at you with, there'd be way too many people had to be involved, and how could they pull all of it? It's not rocket science. First, a lot of people can be bought off. And since money is made out of fucking thin air, monopoly money, there's no, if you got 2,000 people involved in a project, it's nothing to give them each $1 million or $2 million. That's nothing. And if paying them off doesn't work, it's a mighty nice looking family you got there. What would I do if somebody started threatening Elliot? What would I fucking do? That's how easy it is to pull this shit off. And of course, there are people that leak, and then they wind up with the cement shoes. Just using a metaphor, but it does happen. It's very easy.
It doesn't take a lot of people, and most people involved through compartmentalization don't even know what they're doing.
That's right. They don't just the need to know. The need to know. The whole Robert Lazar thing is an awesome example of that, because getting it back to UFOs. He knew some things and he saw some things, but he knew he was being completely kept out of the bigger picture. He had a little fraction they wanted him to do. And they wanted him to work on the propulsion system of this disc. And that's what they wanted. They wanted him to back engineer the propulsion system of this disc that was in a hangar out at F4. And that's what he did. And he figured some shit out. To me, the dude he's fucking vindicated, because back then at 87, 88, whenever that was, when he first came out telling his story, he said that this craft worked on what was called element 115. When the scientists got a hold of that, they laughed him out of the room, said, there's no such fucking thing. Guess what's been discovered? Element 115. I'm not a chemist. I don't know what the fuck element 115 is, right? But that's a fact. That's what happened, okay? He said these things work. They had this particular one. He called it the sport model because it was a disc. It was like the classic. It was like 25 feet in diameter. He said there were 9 different types of craft in this thing, all different types. It was very bizarre craft. And his job was to work on the propulsion system of the sport model. And when he saw it, he said, "Oh, government has been doing this stuff. They've been working on this stuff." The minute he walked up inside of the craft, he said, "Oh shit. The seats are this big, the ceilings are low. It wasn't made for human proportions." So what he said was that this thing had 3 what he called gravity amplifiers. So if you picture like a long, like metal rod, I'm just giving you something for imagery, and then there's a big cylinder attached to the bottom of the metal rod. There's 3 of those, and you can put them in different configurations, like 2 going upward and outward while one's dead center and down, or 2 this way while one's this way. One was called the Omicron configuration. And it depended on the type of flight this craft was doing at the time. And one of the things that the craft was made for was very high speed travel. And this was one of the most fascinating things to me. He said it could do low speed travel, but it was a very unstable method of travel for this type of disc. So when it was in the in that mode for low speed, it looked silly. It looked like a bad 50 sci-fi. It was wobbly. And I immediately thought about footage of a UFO, I think it was in Brazil, in like the 80s. And this craft's moving behind a high-rise building. And it looks like a cheesy 50s film because it's wobbly. It's oscillating and wobbling. And he said what they do is they actually create gravity, and it pulls the craft towards the gravity. And as a result, it warps the atmosphere around the craft. That made me think of the guy in Switzerland who'd taken these close-up detailed pictures of UFOs. One of them was where it's taken off the ground, and the bottom, one side of the disc looks like it's melting. Oh, well, obviously, well, that's a terrible job. That's a bad hope, but who knows, right? And then he went into hiding for 30 fucking years because he was having his life threatened. He didn't write any books. And he just recently came back out on Joe Rogan. What is your opinion of Joe Rogan, please?
Joe Rogan at this point is a shill. At one point, I think he was honest. Around the time when he changed his story on the moon landings, he's been an establishment shill.
Thank you.
And at this point, he's completely bought off.
So I thought it was interesting that he was, I still haven't watched because he does these lengthy shows. And I really want to watch them because Bob Lazar came out of hiding. It may seem suspect that he chose Joe Rogan, but he may not know anything about Joe Rogan. What I've noticed Joe Rogan tends to do lately is try to steer conversations either towards something or away from something else. And he's good at doing that, deflecting that. You know?
He's very good.
And you're right. It's a very different man from the one that I first saw when he first started coming out with the podcast.
Yeah, he's gifted at what he does. He's a very good interviewer. He's very good at creating entertaining conversations, especially long-length ones. But what they did was they got his skill and they took it and they know how to use it.
Yeah,
he used to use it for truth. He used to talk real, and now he's more controlled. He does.
And then Spotify bought him, but didn't he just get canceled from Spotify for something he said? I said Spotify bought him.
Yes.
$2, but didn't he just get canceled or something for some bullshit he said? Even though I don't like him, it's like this whole cancel thing.
I don't know. I haven't followed that. I didn't hear about it, but yeah, it's like $100 million they bought his show. And, but if they canceled him, that's new information to me, but they're canceling everybody. So it wouldn't surprise me.
Right. It's not just the left canceling the right. They're canceling each other and, Dark Side of the Moon. I wonder what's over there, Ro.
Ro is fascinated with the dark side of the moon. I don't know. It's weird to me. I've always thought it was weird that the moon stays stationary the way it does. I don't know about what the reasons are for that, but that's weird to me.
Well, there is a lot of weird stuff about the moon in and of itself. So on the one hand, you've got a guy like Richard Hoagland who's saying we did land on the moon. But he also says that we found these structures all over the moon, and he's got pictures that show these glass-like structures. And he also shows what looks like almost like an C-3PO style helmet on the ground, like technical trash all over the surface of the moon. That being said, he's the guy that found the face on Mars, the Sphinx-like face.
Right.
Then you have the people with the legitimate questions about all these so-called lunar flights and landings, and not the least of which is what's called the Van Allen belt, which is the radiation belt that from all aspects that I could look at, we did not have the ability for our craft to move through this high radiation belt without it throwing all of the electronics and machinery off, completely throwing it out of whack, maybe even burning the craft. One of the most interesting things I saw, and it could be a fake, I always have to say this, people, I've been fooled before and not done my homework, and I post something, and then somebody, square me up, right? That's the way it should be done, without too much shaming. But unless this was a clever fake, this was an instructional video made by NASA for other people who were working there. And the guy was literally talking about the technology that they now have. And this was a recent video, the last few years. The story is it was leaked out by somebody. It wasn't made for you and me to see. He literally says in the video, we'll now finally be able to move through the Van Allen belt. Well, what does that tell you? We didn't move through the Van Allen belt. One of the other
talking about the Orion missions. I know exactly what video you're discussing. Okay. It is a NASA video, and I've used it in a video that I made about the moon landings. but he does. He talks about how they're going to be able to send equipment through the Van Allen radiation belts finally. Equipment, not people.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
They couldn't even get equipment through, he says. And now they're going to be able to do it and get Orion through so that they can eventually send people.
Right. So, something else I saw that was interesting was this footage where they're going outside around the craft while they're on the moon. And for some reason, it's like they got a hammer or something. It reminds me of I worked as an extra for a movie one time. And the director was literally like, when it was time for us to be filmed, I'm sitting around in the fucking hot sun for hours, sweating my butt off, waiting for somebody to come tell me to do something. Finally, director comes and goes, come here. He's like, you see those tires over there? Pick those up and walk across the dirt road. He just wung it right then. That's what they do with the extras. When I saw this astronaut hammering on the craft, all I could think of somebody going, okay, now hammer on the craft. Here's the important thing. The hammer was making sound, but we're told the moon doesn't have enough of an atmosphere to even hold in it. It doesn't have enough gravity to even hold in its own atmosphere. So if it has no atmosphere, vibration has nothing to travel through. There would be no sound getting through to a microphone for us to hear. You'd hear it clank, clank, clank. Somebody's got to address that,
And they don't. And they should, because look, the footage for sure is fake. There's evidence of wire rigging. There's all kinds of evidence of different things in the footage. Now, if they would have come out and said, look, we had to because this, and this, you could even say that the Van Allen radiation belts or the magnetism destroyed the footage and we had to recreate it. Anything is better than telling me that's real to this day when I know it's not.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So what I
would rather they say, hey, we recreated some of this because you can tell it's fake. It's demonstratable.
You know about
the shot they did of halfway to the moon. That's been exposed. BBC had a whole documentary where they exposed and showed the footage of how they faked it and staged that shot. They still use that shot to this day and say it's halfway to the moon. It's not.
Right. Yeah, and all this stuff is definitely well established. So you're familiar with the conspiracy theory. Oh, yes, Diane. The guy said, when they said, why haven't we gone back to the moon? This dude was like, we lost that technology. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me?
We just don't have it anymore, and it would be too laborious to put it back again.
You've got to be joking. Like, even if you could lose the technology somehow, you had the brains to do it to begin with. You would just do like ants do when their bed gets pulled down by a person. You'd rebuild it. You'd start right back over. You know about the Shining conspiracy theory, right?
Yes. Stanley Kubrick, that he filmed the moon and that The Shining was his way of letting people know.
Of showing his participation. And I know he was an old man when he died, but it was right before Eyes Wide Shut was screened. I guess you probably know this. He had an argument with his boss, his funding, about the direction of the movie, and certain scenes he insisted not be clipped out. And according to the witness, he walked out slamming the door. He was dead a few days later. The movie was still released, and the scenes that Stanley Kubrick wanted in that movie were cut out. I know he's an old man, but these are definitely something worth pondering.
And Eyes Wide Shut is a predictive programming movie, but he must have wanted to put something in there they didn't want in it.
Yeah, because they love throwing that stuff in your face
and shit.
Yeah, they love throwing it in your face, but this must be over the top.
Yeah, he must have wanted to put something that it was just a little more than they wanted in there.
All right, so I'm curious more about your opinion because you definitely seem to be very, very knowledgeable about this particular subject. And why do you think they did it? Why did they fake it?
Well, I think they originally intended to do it. And I think at one point they realized they just could not, that there was technical limitations and there was no way they could do it. And they knew that no one ever could, that it's something that can't be done. They found that out, is what I think. Not that they wouldn't be able to do it for 5-10 years, that no one would ever be able to do it. And then in that reality, you could do whatever you want with it. So they decided to fake it, I think. And the reason is because it becomes a black hole and a pit for money. But I think it has more to do with the global agenda. Why is everyone involved in it? You know, because all the countries have space agencies. Many, many countries have space agencies and pretend to go to outer space, because I think it is all pretend. But I think it's because it's such an easy black hole for money. But I also think there's deeper reasons. I think there's a pursuit to kill God through scientism that it has something to do with too. But that's part of a whole big. We got to go a long way before we get to that connection.
I'm afraid to go anywhere. So, like, and people, I don't really advocate anything. I will tell you, I actually saw a Sasquatch. I don't know if he was real, but I don't know if I'm real. Okay, so I'm telling you that Sasquatch is at least as real as I am in my world. So what I'm saying is, I don't generally try to tout anything as something I know as a fact. But even these people that talk about flat Earth, when people come down and shame them, I'm like, wait a minute, they're asking a question. It's okay to ask questions, even if you think it's moronic. And let's think about this honestly. What do we really know, most of us average citizens, right? We're dependent on all these experts to tell us what the reality is. Like, there's a lot of people say, well, it couldn't be flat. Look, we see the other bodies out there and they're round. Well, why couldn't you have a scenario where the Earth is flat and everything else is round? We don't know. The main thing is we don't have the means and we don't have the instrumentation and the time to go around quantifying every aspect of our life and engaging it. So we put our trust in so-called authorities. So that doesn't mean we know it. We're trusting what somebody else tells us. And as you've discussed before, you're basically you're born into a big steaming pile of shit. And hopefully at some point you start climbing your way out and you go, Jesus Christ, almost everything I've been taught is exactly probably the opposite of what's real, especially when it comes to certain subjects,
Right.
Space, Houston says inner space, only 5 to 10 miles. I think that's perfectly a legitimate thing to say, Hugh. I don't know that, but
NASA's open that they can't go any higher than four to about what he said, about that far out.
I'm not a scientist, and so it's like
they're scientists. That's what they say. I'm only going off what they say. They say they don't leave low Earth orbit.
Right.
And they did it 7 times in the 70s, but they can't do it today because that technology would be too laborious to recreate.
One of the things that makes
60 years in the future
is some form of hologram theory. Like, I don't even think that there's this big out there.
I think they do things, but I think it has to do with interdimensional things and manipulating space and time. That's what space is. When they talk about this whole thing, like the aliens, in that disclosure they just put out, the Israeli space chief, he said that the aliens already here, they already interact with us, that we wouldn't even understand what space is. I think that's what he means by that. They travel in between dimensions.
Right.
That's what the secret space program or the Galactic Federation that Roe was talking about would be. They're not travelers from Venus.
Right.
Those are lights in the sky. I think that they're moving inside and out of the veil.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I don't know how somehow this segues me to another name I won't be able to pull up, but the ayahuasca DMT guy, the guru, the ethnobotanist.
I'm thinking it's right there. I'm like you though. I'm bad with names, so we'll have to move on.
Anyway, this guy was like, one of the interesting things about DMT is there have been repeated episodes by DMT users of seeing the same being. Okay, they're each describing the same being.
Right.
When they go on a trip, and they say this being has told them that it is an interdimensional being, but it often stays outside. I love Hollow Earth theory, Joan, and the whole Agartha thing. Man, I'm fascinated by that. And the obsession that the Germans had with trying to get there. And what was that American general, Admiral Byrd?
Admiral Byrd.
So where was I? This being would tell them that it's some type of interdimensional being that often hangs out. Get your head around this. It hangs outside of the dimensions. And what it does is it'll creep into a dimension and it feeds off of negative energy. It feeds off of stress and conflict. Now, this is why this is really fascinating to me, because you know who Alex Gray is?
Not offhand.
When I ask you that, please say no, I don't. I love telling people I know because I know there are people that will ask me something, and when they're asking me, they're trying to say, but I do. I'm not doing that with you. I'm just saying for a starting point, right? Because I don't know jack shit. But I do know Alex Gray just because of one of those things that came into my world of knowledge. He's a brilliant artist. You've probably seen his art. It's all this stuff where it'll show like human bodies, but you're looking at like the musculature of them and no skin. And there's all this connectivity to the universe and the cosmos. Does that ring a bell? It is so detailed. It's incredible.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about now that you described the picture.
So here's what he told because he's a huge, he's big on psychedelics and has been ever since the early 70s. So he was introduced to LSD.
Are you talking about Terence McKenna?
Terence McKenna was the guy I was talking about. Terence.
Oh, okay.
Terence was the one that was talking about the interdimensional being. And this is how this dovetails with this interdimensional being that says it feeds off of energy of people and conflicts, including wars, but also personal arguments, everything in between. This thing's food is actual energy, negative energy emotion. Okay. So when I heard that, it made me think about Alex Gray telling a story about the second time or third time he'd used LSD. He used LSD once or twice and he loved it. Okay. He was a young guy at college. He'd met some of the big guys like Ken Kesey, these players, and he got invited to an LSD party. And it's kind of funny the way he words it because he's like, I just figured these were people that knew what they were doing and were responsible. It just cracks me up thinking, an LSD party, who knows what the fuck's going to happen when you get 40 people together triple on acid, right? So he goes to this party. And it's absolute pandemonium. Okay, there are people butt naked fucking everywhere in the house. There's a guy running around naked, puking into a bucket. There's people screaming at each other. Anything you can imagine is going on in this house. And he's tripping his fucking butt off. And he said he goes into the living room. This fucking chilled me almost like the story I started the show out with, okay? He said he looked into the center of the room in this area on the floor where nobody was. And he said, the only way I can describe it is an electric pool. On that electric pool of milk, there was like an area like if you imagined a waterfall, except not coming down, it was going up to the top of the room. And he saw these beings at the top of the room feeding out of that electric pool of milk. And he knew immediately they were feeding on the orgiastic energy. And furthermore, and you know how LSD and psychedelics, they bring you epiphanies like that. There's no having to rationalize or think. They just come at you. He said not only he knew that these entities came down here to feed off this negative orgiastic energy, they were the ones that put it in the heads of the party planners to do the party to begin with. They set the whole thing up so that they could specifically go to this thing and feed all the energy. That just fucking chills down my bones. And then I hear Terence McKenna talking about this thing that people continually see when they do these DMT trips. I think one of the coolest things I heard him say, and I don't know if there was ever any follow-up on this, he said, what we need to do is get a guy or a girl who's no good at fucking math, no good, but has a really good memory, and give them a very complex mathematical equation and send them out on the DMT trip. And if they see this entity, give them the equation and see if they can come back with an answer. That would really give it a whole new level of reality and verifiability. But I never heard if anybody attempted it or they probably didn't, But what a fascinating thought. Terrible at math, but almost like photographic memory, Give them a huge, complicated equation, go up there, communicate that equation to this being and see if you can come back with an answer.
That would be fascinating. I was hoping you were going to tell me that they did that.
Oh, I'd love to give you that, but I'm not going to make up any stories.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, man, I hate to do this, but I'm going to have to wrap up our conversation real soon because my studio is also my wife's bedroom. And it's getting to be that time. But, dude, this has been awesome. And we got to do this again soon.
Yeah, I love it. I'm
hanging out with you.
This is really what juices me, and It's a pressure to talk about whatever. I know I was like trying to keep it away from the politics. I get that. And that's me being I used to have a therapist who said I'm a closeted control freak. He was like, you steer, like I was talking about Joe Rogan, you try to steer conversations one way or another, and that's probably true. You know what? And we're going to wrap it up, but he filmed me. The first day I went from having hair halfway down my back to shaving my head bald, and I go into his meeting every week, and he's like, oh, fuck, what's going on now? He picked that day to start filming. He said, I told you we're going to start filming your sessions, and then your homework is to go home and wash yourself. Oh, my God, Shawn. I wouldn't do it. I put that videotape away, and about 5 years later, I found it. I put it in. I was horrified at the person. I mean, it almost makes me want to cry right now. So filled with just stress and terror and manipulation. The thing he had said all that time before, yes, I was trying to steer things away from, instead of trying to learn from this man and realize my problems, I was trying to impress him. I turned him into a police officer, basically, and trying to make sure I didn't make him think I was fucking crazy. You know what I mean?
Right.
These physical tics and things that I'd had, it was so hard to watch on. It was like one of the toughest things I've ever had to do. Anyway, I don't know why I got that. I had to get that out.
Hey, it's hard to watch yourself after the show every night. I watch this back, and I also used to listen to my stand-up. Every show I would record it and listen to it back. It's hard. When you're really analyzing yourself, it's tough. I can't imagine watching a therapy session back.
Oh, yeah. But, you're right, though. And I know you'd have to do that. And it's a key thing to do as God, I'd love to be able to catch your stand-up. You need to do that as part of the job. Let's see where I need work. Let's see what I'm doing here. Let's see where I'm not flowing.
That's the only way I learn.
Absolutely.
And that way you can tell what worked, you can tell what didn't. And if you're really honest with yourself, you grow more because you're analyzing it.
That's right.
That's how I always learned. That's how I do it with this and anything else.
Oh, hey,
and as far as stand-up goes, man, we need to open up the clubs again.
I know. Please, no matter what your stance is on this disease, people, let's open things back up. Let's let things get back going. You know what I mean?
Time. It's definitely time.
More and more people are agreeing with that. More people are agreeing with that. They are. More and more people see that's the truth. You have to open it back up, no matter what your thoughts are on this. Greg, thank you for participating, and look forward to seeing if anything else we post. I don't know if we're on Bigfoot now or, God, I'm such a nerd. I'm probably a member of 20 Bigfoot Facebook sites. Might need to trim them back. But yes,
we all have our passions.
Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. It's great to just sit here and talk with a friend and just shoot the shit like we're sitting by a fire. As a matter of fact,
exactly.
I've got fire right here. I've got 2 candles.
Oh, yeah?
Well, this room is not lit well, as you can see. And I'm trying to always do it to where, like, my face doesn't look too blown up white or, I'll put a couple of candles in front.
I think you did a good job with the lighting today.
Good. Yeah, because usually I'm in the dark, right? Mystery Phil.
It looks nice. Well, thank you so much, Philip. Is there anything you'd like to promote? I know you said your hot sauce is kind of on hiatus right now.
No, it's not really on hiatus, but I will tell you one other thing. Unless you're in Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama, or Florida, thank you, Hugh. The Garden of GoodandHot.com. That's it. The Garden of GoodandHot.com. I can't get the thing in the field of. I'm stupid with this stuff. That's it. That's the bird girl with the flames. And because this manufacturer decided to push me into 12-ounce bottles, they fucking weigh a ton. And postage is eating my ass alive. And granted, I do have a high price point for this sauce because it's got a lot of high dollar ingredients: Chardonnay, dark rum, high quality olive oil, about 20 ingredients. I sent one out to my sister in California. It cost me like $20 to mail a bottle of sauce out.
Whoa.
So right, if you order it, I'll send it. Grant, if you order it, wherever you are, I will. But I'm just trying to keep a promotion right now. My state and the states surrounding. So any of you guys are in Florida, Mississippi.
But the states you listed, it's in stores?
No, it's not in stores. I'm solely doing online right now.
Oh, okay.
I am going to get it in a few mom and pop shops here in Savannah. like get out on the road. Literally, we have a hot sauce distributor here. It used to be in California called Mojada Mobetta. It's one of the biggest distributors in the country. Now it's right here in my city, and he told me I'll carry your sauce. He's got an online magazine and a physical magazine. He's got everything from fucking Tabasco to I'm talking like the hardest to find, like small batch stuff from Barbados. You know what I mean? Great guy. And then there's a hot sauce shop out on Tybee Island. He's already committed to buying a case or two from me. I'm trying to do it slow because there's a lot of learning curves for me, Shawn. I'm not a businessman. I've learned so much the hard way in this thing already. And all the scammers that are coming after me now that I've made the mistake and registered my name with the state. I'm constantly getting letters from people pretending like there's the state. Your registration is almost complete. Just another $75, you know?
Right. Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
Predators everywhere.
Yeah. But thank you for allowing that. You know, I'm not like, I always feel a little weird about plugging stuff. But, you know,
I do too. I do too. But you know what? I mean, you got to.
Yeah. And it's my job. I'm not, I don't work in a kitchen anymore.
Don't be ashamed of it.
Got to make a living, right?
I hope everything works out with the sauce and everything goes good.
I want you to have a model, so you need to email me your address. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I got some emails that I can respond to from you that I can give you that.
Good.
All right.
Good.
Well, thank you so much, Philip.
Everybody, I'm sorry I couldn't keep up with the comments. Quit moving, so I'm looking at the same comments. They weren't.
They do that. They do that sometimes.
And I'm such a simpleton. I can't really talk to you and look at the comments, but I do appreciate everybody who's contributed and who's been watching. It means a lot to me, and it means a lot to Shawn. Shawn is doing a fucking awesome job. This guy is the shit, and you know that. And he knows, like you said, you're the shit too. You guys have built something that's fun to have, informative, open-minded. Something we need more of. Honestly.
Thank you.
No, I mean that. I do. I love you, Shawn.
I appreciate it. Love you too, man. You have a great night.
You too, and we'll talk again soon.
All right. All right, guys. That was Philip. That was fun, right? Wow, that was a marathon. We got almost 2.5 hours. That was fantastic. I'm excited to watch that back. I don't know how many of you guys are wanting to hang out at a watch party, but there will be one in about 10 minutes on my timeline. But that was great. I love hanging out with Philip and any great guest and having a great conversation like that. But thank you. I appreciate that. It's hard. I'm not going to lie to you. This is a daily show. It's live. And it's a lot of work. It is a ton of work. But like I was telling Philip, don't be ashamed to promote it. This is a product that I put out for you guys. I obsess over giving you something of quality. I work very hard on this. So when I promote the website or I promote my Patreon or I promote our t-shirt store, I used to feel guilty about that. I used to feel like, oh, I hate this. It feels like begging. This is a job. I'm doing a show. Like I'm putting out entertainment for you, just like he's making hot sauce. He's trying to live his dream. Don't be ashamed is all I'm saying with that. But I appreciate that people are finding value, and I'm glad that they see that we built this together. What we have here at this show is special, and I love it. And Will was saying, share the stand-up specials or stand-up videos. I've shared the ones that I have. The thing is, I lost a lot of that videos and audio in my divorce. A ton of it. Totes of stuff that I would had saved of material and different things. But if I find more video, I will share it. But I have played some on the shows. Joan's coming to the watch party. I'm going to be there. But if you want to come, we'll be doing that and hanging out. And then tomorrow night, on Saturday nights, we do a week in review. And I got to work on that too. But I edit up the whole week and we watch clips of every day and then hang out on Saturday nights. So if you want to come back for that, then definitely I'll see you there. But it is a repeat. I've had people mad at me because they're like, this is not live. I'm like, I know. I told you it wasn't live. It's called a week in review. Diane's got to get some sleep because it's tax season. You know what I found? I work in a fast food restaurant, and people are spending their money. They're supersizing their fries, man. You could tell that tax money's rolling out. Yeah, they're rich. That's what I call it anyway. When they start ordering extra hash browns, I always say rich person in drive-thru. CJ said, subscribe to Greg's YouTube channel, Man of Light. Yeah, Greg's comments were very nice. I appreciated having Greg here. And then check out Philip Sauce, thegardenofgoodandhot.com. And thanks so much to you guys for hanging out and taking part in the show and everything that you guys do. And I appreciate you. And I will see you guys at the watch party later on if you want to come hang out with us. But definitely tomorrow night at the Week in Review. And then Monday night for a brand new episode of this show, the Shawn Yankey Show. Y'all have a great night and enjoy the rest of it. I'll see you later.